just cut it wherever when we're talking.
Yeah, so what's the liminal space?
So liminal comes from, I think it's limus. It's a Latin term, but it means threshold. You know, like the
Limes.
threshold of
Yeah,
the limus, right? So it basically means something that is like marginal or between two states, like two states of being, or on a border. These are the things that are liminal. So liminal spaces are those spaces that are like the space in between, that it's neither this nor that, and it's kind of somewhere in between. And so you can have liminal spaces, you can have kind of liminal people. The archetype of the liminal people would be, liminal person would be something like the shapeshifter archetype in the hero's journey. So a liminal space, there's like in Joseph Campbell, like the hero's journey, the monomyth, the liminal space happens at the beginning of an adventure usually, but adventurers can revisit it, but it's usually represented as a bar. So like the bar that they go into in Star Wars, the Prancing Pony Tavern in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You'll see it over and over. If you just watch like adventure stories, hero stories, whatever, that the bar or the tavern is a liminal space. And the reason why it's a liminal space is like in the context of, well, I mean, just the old world in general, the tavern was the place that was neither inside nor outside, because it would be the place that if an outsider arrived, they would be welcome there. And so if you wanted to experience the outside as an insider, you would go to the tavern and be like, who is this person who's here? Right? Whether they're coming from out of the wilderness, whether they're a foreigner, whether they're whatever, right? And so when you would meet somebody outside to inside, that the
Like
meeting would take place in it's a portal. Exactly. A portal. Well, what does portal mean? It means door. Right? That's the literal, like, port. That's the translation. It's gateway, door, right? And so the threshold of the portal, the thing that the portal itself, right? The limus, the threshold, that's a liminal space. And so places that are liminal spaces tend to be very free. But they also tend to be very small as compared to other places. Right? Because it's neither here nor there. So it's like, who are you answering to, really? And a lot of Hakim
So you
Bey.
kind of have two masters. Is that what you're saying?
No, you kind of have no master. So Hakim Bey wrote a book called which that's not his real name. It's like a hippie kind of a lefty philosopher, but it's called Temporary Autonomous Zone. I don't know if it's a book or an essay, but it's very popular like in the rave scene, because raves were, especially like break-in illegal raves or like desert raves, things like Burning Man that evolved into Burning Man. Like in my early days, I went to those types of events in the Mojave near where I was born, the full moon parties and everything. He called those temporary autonomous zones. So again, we're talking about the same thing. Like, but they're temporary. They're kind of like pop-up autonomous zones, which Burning Man sort of, I think he wrote this book in the early 90s.
Porkfest is also an example of that, no?
Porkfest would be a temporary autonomous zone. Exactly. Those are liminal spaces. And some people that you'll meet are just like liminal people. These sort of, like a digital nomad would be a liminal person. Right? It's kind of the archetype of like a liminal, how to be like a because you're sort of neither here nor there. So it's like that idea of this space, because the internet's kind of a liminal space, right? The internet, it's very liminal in that way.
Well,
is that it's like
just like everywhere. So do you think it's still, because it still connects two worlds, right? It connects the digital world and the real world. But now
it's the connection between people, right? It's the connection between the real. So it's like, it's the connection between you and I.
Yeah.
But everything in between is liminal. And to a certain degree, we're like, it's a black box in many ways. We're unaware of the full scope of it. I mean, we can map it. If we're highly technical, we can map the whole thing, right?
TCP.
Right. We can. It's possible. But for most people, it's liminal. Right? It's just like it's the threshold, it's the portal in between. And so those places, The internet itself at the protocol level is still very free.
Yes.
Very
yes.
free.
Right.
At the protocol level, incredibly free. It's only when you get into the platforms. Oh, dude, it's
the IP protocol,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Still
like,
to
how
this
is this
day.
still around?
Still to this day, it's so free, and it's basically to the point where it's so. I don't know whether it's because of its size, it's because of its design, but either way, it's both. But it's like
the ossification, right? Like ossification is a big problem in like how many routers have upgraded to IPv6, right? Which has been around for like, I don't know, a decade, even more. Like it's very hard to just swap that out, and maybe that's
tells you something.
It's still so free. Yeah.
But that tells you something, right? It tells you that there's a lack of authority. That right there, if you were looking at nothing else, that right, because how would you even legislate that everybody had to do that?
Upgrade your router.
Or else.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's beyond the scope of what the state is currently technically even able to do.
Yeah, every time I think about just the IP protocol and TCP, it makes me very optimistic, because I'm like if this is still around, then there are forces at play which are beyond what the CBDC people or whatever, what they're gonna do. This is out of their reach, and we've been talking with like ham-fisted radio, these kinds of things, and those we can enter once, I don't know, like the ISPs break or whatever, right? But
but what are the chances that the ISPs would break?
Right, like first of all, or like these like on Twitter you can see them, like these super preppers. So like, oh well, once the internet shuts down, like you have to be ready. But then they spend all the time on the internet or whatever.
On the internet, yeah,
and it's like, well, like the internet is too much of a, like, currently it's very powerful for the government, right? Like it's currently it's used as a tool for control, obviously, right? Like anyone should see this right now. But the way it's designed is that you can use it as a tool for freedom, right? Like this the two of us, we could do that through Webrtc or something, or like Or I just saw someone on the Rust subreddit be like, "Hey, I made a Zoom clone," right? Like it's open source, MIT license.
I mean, Jitsi, right? There are a lot of people have started using Jitsi now, and I think it's just a wrapper on Webrtc as far as I know. So like,
I think I've heard of that, yeah. Or whereby I think is the same thing.
Whereby is another one. I mean that's the thing, that like you can make a Webrtc. There's just little blogs of people like, make a Webrtc video conferencing, client, and then you need like a little handshake server. I've made one. It takes like, I don't know, it took me 15 minutes maybe to do. It's like super simple, So yeah. Just a little like, here's a little tutorial of how to do it. And it's like 15 minutes and you're like, oh. And in some ways, that's what makes me comfortable using Zoom, right? Because I'm like, well, this is there. It's just, it's there.
It's like the most convenient by far, right? Like I press one button and it records it and converts it, splits out the different audios. It's
and everybody's got it. Everybody's got access. But what I mean by it makes me comfortable using Zoom is that I know that like, well, the Webrtc isn't going anywhere, right? It's like, it's there. Things get bad. It's like, for me, that's the prepping. Where I'm like, oh, it took me 15 minutes to fire up one of these. Okay, I don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's good. Oh, so something goes wrong, 15 minutes, and I'm banned from Zoom forever for some reason. Okay, 15 minutes, I've got this thing fired up. Okay, no problem. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, use the things that are there now. And then when there's the mass of people are off of it, it'll be bootstrapped very fast. But the same thing goes for the internet, right? People are like, oh, when the internet goes down, and I'm like, well, all of the routers didn't disappear. And people want the internet. So we'll have, if the internet was to go down, which in and of itself is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Right? Like this thing it's specifically built to withstand the nuclear holocaust. That's what it was built. The network was built to withstand the collapse of
military attacks. Yeah.
That's it. That's what it was built to do. And you're like, when the internet goes off, it's like, okay, that means every ISP, all the ISPs at one time are all taken down, because if they're not, everybody's just going to route around.
Right. It's
Everybody's just
automatically
going to
round around, right? It's designed to automatically round around.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, yo, man, no, it doesn't quite work that way. Doesn't quite work that way. And whatever society manages, there will be a massive incentive for some nation to keep their internet up, because if everybody else's internet goes down, the nations that are able to keep theirs up win. They win.
Yeah.
Like, it's over. Everybody else is in the Stone Age and they're ruling over everyone. So it's like, dude, the internet's not going down.
It's too valuable, and like it's not
too
complicated. Like you
no,
you can like if you just get all the electronics, you could probably build your own router in like, I don't know, a week if you like
well,
have to research
every
everything.
laptop can be a router.
Yeah.
Every laptop could be anything that's got a radio on it. Anything that's got a Wi-Fi radio on it can be which is everything. Your phone can be a router.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and that's the whole thing. People, there could be something. What it's going to be if there is a societal collapse is that it will be this very slow forgetting of the information of how to turn your phone into a router, or the very slow.
Kind of what we saw after the Roman Empire, just like these aqueducts, which are super powerful. They just like, there's a crack in there, and then okay, no water anymore.
No water. We don't know how to repair it, right? Or that it's just that the consumer electronics get designed to a point where we can no longer mess with them at all. Like right now, I can root this and just turn this into a Linux box, right?
Yeah, with an iPhone, it gets more difficult. Yeah.
Aha. You see? So it's like the progression is toward, I can't mess with it anymore. And never mind something that's inside your skin, you know, hardware, these types of things that people want to talk about. So
Neuralink,
it's like, Neuralink, right? No. You're not going to be able to just turn that into a Linux box. So that's really the danger. And I think that the people who are oriented toward, oh, I still want to be able to work on my stuff. But this is true for all kinds of things. Cars, you know, cars are like your Tesla. You can't rebuild the engine on a Tesla.
It's already deporting itself if you don't do the payments, right? Like
it's what I'm saying.
Like, yeah.
So that's the real worry.
I have a like a vintage car, right? So it's like 20 years. No, it's 29 years old. So,
you can work on that.
Yeah, like and I did, right? I changed the gearbox with my dad, and I know that car will always like there's no electronics to speak of in there, right? Like it's the automatic whatever, but like it's never like, even if all of that disappears, like it really only depends on fuel, right?
Yeah, and you can still, I mean, if you have gear to machine parts, you can machine parts.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Cuba.
Really the only feasible attack on the internet and crypto is just like a blackout kind of thing, right? Where like the grid just
the energy goes down, the electricity, where there's no electricity, but still, I mean, people will find a way if the knowledge is still there. The real danger is it's a danger to the knowledge. If the knowledge is accessible, fine. If it's not, that's really that's what gets you into problems.
Which is why we had that idea very, very early on in Saipan, that like this project, it's a monastery, right? Like this is to preserve and to move. And you know, like just yesterday we were talking about, okay, like we kind of want to do some kind of like sharing of, or like almost make like a journal, like a scientific kind of journal, but for eCash and for Lotus, right? For these things, okay, like tokens. Why are tokens important, right? Like what kind of different trade-offs are there and so forth, and just you know, and just like give people a resource to do that. And we were like, hey, what about we just call it Saipan Institute, right? We had all of that set up already, and it's like, well, it's kind of a continuation of that idea that was sparked in there. And you know, like a lot of the people who are in who we met in Saipan again, right? It was Alex, it was Will, it was me. You know, like we were this like this group of Saipan, like the Saipan crew. So it's interesting that spirit sticks around still, and I think this will just continue, right? It will have this shape of like, it won't have the same it doesn't look at all like a monastery, but it has very like optically, but the ideas or the purpose is very, very similar, right? It's like a yeah.
Well, but I think what's interesting is, you know, the framing of like, well, what is the purpose of a monastery? Like, ultimately, the purpose of the monastery is not to, and this has been something that for me I've come to understand a lot better over the last years. It's like the preservation of knowledge, that monasteries preserve knowledge is a byproduct. It's not their purpose. It's the byproduct of their purpose, right? So their purpose is to provide an environment whereby individuals can suffer to seek truth.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So that it's like somebody who's really trying to seek truth, like capital T truth. Usually a monastery begins because somebody on their own just goes off and is doing it, right? And then somebody finds out about this person who's doing this thing, and then they go there, and then you got to build some structure so that these people are there. And then as things that are valuable, that are matching with truth, as knowledge comes in, those individuals make sure to record it for future individuals who are seeking truth, right? But at the end of the day, it's about like, here's the truth, I'm seeking the truth, but I'm also like, it's the praxis.
Yes.
So like a monastery is a place of praxis. You know, it's not an intellectual, it's not a university, it's not theoretical. So all of the knowledge that a monastery is preserving is all knowledge in the furtherance of praxis. So it's like, here's the thing that we do. Okay, here's this knowledge that has been useful, that has elevated our praxis. And so therefore we want to make sure that we sort of record that. It's the same way that you would maybe like a family recipe or something for some food that everybody loves, like your grandma's casserole
you have to do it
or
all
whatever.
The time.
Right? And then it's like, well, everybody loves that. Let me get grandma, record this recipe so that we can do it in the future because it's for our praxis of like family get-togethers, right? That we always have it.
Like you can write it down, right? Like take this, take that, but there'll always be some nuance that is lost, right?
There'll always be, yes. And so you have to do it, right? So it's like you do it and you write it down, but it's like oral tradition plus written tradition together. And I think like one of the things that I've seen doing like Bitcoin Mystery School, having these students, then doing more advanced classes and seeing just how few people actually, like, people find the information interesting. It's intellectually stimulating. They enjoy the community. They like being around the people. That gives them a sense of belonging. That's good, right? That's perfectly fine. But the people who want more, whether you give it to them, whether you write down this whole thing of why are tokens good or not, and it actually doesn't matter. Like the people who, like the 99% of people who find the information interesting don't care about the why are tokens valuable thing. They both don't care and they have no incentive to care. Right. And for the most part, this will be like, what do they want to do? How do they want to participate? Like, unfortunately, evangelism of like the native token. Right. Let me put you know, if it's eCash, let me put XEC in my Twitter name. Let me put a little globe. Let me be a reply guy. Let me say, you know, when number go up. Let me do all of that. Let me be in a Telegram channel. Let me share memes. Like, let me do all of that. Right. But the people who actually, it's not just get it, but the people who are seeking truth and see like, ooh, there's something here. You don't have to give them anything. They're going to go out and try to find the things. And at most, what they'll do is they'll come and be like, hey, I've reached, what is like, how do I get further? I've reached this point. Like, I don't understand this. And that's when you'll get into like, well, why are tokens valuable, right? And those are the only people that care about it. So if you're creating those things, I think the thing to the way to consider it is like, be oriented toward, this is information that I would like to record, that I would like to even look back on myself, but it's not something that Like, it's not really useful if it's necessary. It could be put public, but it's not the type of thing where it's like, oh, here, give this to people and it's going to sort of change their behavior. I think that's an important thing to understand, right? Building the monastery doesn't necessarily make people who would not otherwise have wanted to become monks.
Yeah.
Like, the people who are seeking the truth to the point that they would become monks are like, they're going to do it one way or the other. So Bitcoin is a tough one to, like, there's a lot of truth in there. You can seek truth and you can find truth through a deep exploration of Bitcoin. You absolutely can, because it's like there's so much about what it is to be human that's inside of there. But the number of people who are willing to make that dive to the point where it's like they're actually seeking truth and more than just intellectual stimulation is very, very tiny.
Yeah, because most are like, well, I made this investment. It's almost like buyer's remorse, right? Like, how can I justify having spent this money, right? And it's a little, yeah. And for me, it was.
Is that the case though? I mean, like, I think people get great value out of the community of like dreamers. Like people like to dream together. So it's like, in that way, it's no different than like we were talking about, like Ancapistan. It's no different than like the anarcho-capitalists sort of like, we're dreaming of Ancapistan in the future. But in order to dream that in crypto land, you got to buy a little bit of the thing. And most of the people who are the big evangelists don't have big holdings. They've got a few $100s worth, maybe. Right. And then they're just like, to the moon. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But the value is in the dreaming with other people.
Yeah.
And it's just dreaming. It's just fantasizing. It's just escapism, because they're not going to do anything. Now, the number of people who actually build
behind the Bitcoin maximalists, they're like telling people it's all fine, right? It's literally hopium, right? It's literally like, oh, you are being like put to sleep, back to sleep, because like we have got the solution, like you just have to buy Bitcoin, right? That, like I almost have this like prepared tweet at this point, like if anyone is like, oh, like all like just like if you don't buy Bitcoin at this point, you're stupid or something. Like, I'm like, well, like if that's the only meme you have, buy Bitcoin, then like you will not be prepared at all for like what's actually to come, right? Like the idea is to like earn Bitcoin. I think that's for me the biggest one. Yeah.
Well, but the game, they don't want Bitcoin, right?
They
like
want US dollar.
But maybe. I think it's just another means of. I think we've moved in some ways beyond money. Especially
it's about
the younger generation. Yeah, it's about social. It's about becoming an influencer. Right? That's the highest. Most people would rather have 1 million followers than $1 million. I think if I pulled the average 20-year-old person and I said, here's the deal, because I used to do this with being rich or being famous, but I would be like, okay, here's the deal. Either one, here's what I could give you. I can give you $1 million, but you can never use social media again. Or I'm going to empty out your bank account and take everything that you currently own right now, and including any employment and job that you have, but you can have 1 million followers on the social media platform of your choice. Ask the average 20-year-old. They'll take the 1 million followers.
Yeah.
And why? Because they'll say, well, if I have the 1 million followers, I can make $1 million, which is not true, by the way. That's absolutely false. Absolutely false.
Not sufficient.
There are plenty of people with 1 million followers on various different social media platforms who are still living with their parents. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, I believe that immediately. Of course, right? Like,
absolutely.
Because 1 million especially on stuff like Instagram and so forth,
or TikTok,
Yeah, TikTok even. Probably if you have an email list of 1 million, then it might
get. But they don't put together email lists. Most people aren't doing email lists,
right?
They're not doing email lists, and so this is really what it comes.
Email list now after I realized, right?
but I mean, to bring that to the BTC maximalists with the like buy Bitcoin or always putting up Bitcoin charts and things like that. Really what they're after is being an influencer. Like really what it's about is sitting again and like being the top dreamer. Right? That's the thing to be, is like, and then they can just say literally anything and people will think, oh, that must be what Bitcoin is, like Michael Saylor. Right? Like Breedlove, like Pomp. Like these people could say things where anybody who actually knows Bitcoin is like, that's actually just not true. Like what you said is just actually not true at all. And people are like, don't they explain it? They're experts. Don't they explain it so well? You know?
It's so interesting because like I saw that in the Liberty of Lifetime conference, because you had these like people who like prosper, like you can see, oh, we built this building, right? And now we have this, and we built it so fast, like 3 stories. It took like 3 weeks or whatever, like really like competent people, right? And you can really see it. Or Massimo, right? Like he actually built a private city for normal Honduran people, right? Like this is something that is like really respectable. Like he's actually solving, like he's looking at the people and he's solving a problem, and he's doing it very efficiently. You know, that kind of stuff, like normal entrepreneurship, normal, you know, risk taking, that kind of stuff. And then interspersed, you have these Bitcoin maxis, and they're just like, oh well, you know, Bitcoin is gonna take over the world. And I'm like, well, like the contrast was just so like, okay, like we got these kinds of people, and then we got the maxis. But I think it's because what you said, right? That is what they after, right? Like their goal is to be next to these high achievers and be like, hey, I am a high achiever as well, you know, pay attention, you know, like.
Well, their goal is to speak at a conference, to get invited to speak at conferences. Right? Like that's the goal. The goal has nothing to do with Bitcoin. And one of the ways that you know this is because if you look at a lot of these people's history, or you look at where they go after the love affair with Bitcoin ends, like Pomp, right? They don't care. It could have been, you look at their history and it's just like they did something before that had nothing to do with Bitcoin. And you look at the pattern and it's like, oh, they were getting invited to sustainable development conferences, or you know, invest multi-level marketing, or investing, or look at Richard Hart, right? He was like a multi-level marketing guy, like before that. It's, you look and you, dude, exactly, right? This is exactly my point. So, but what do you see on like that small segment of individuals who are actually doing things? You like two sides, right? Entrepreneurs, not like social engineers, not people who are trying to like use their own personal brand. And I know this firsthand, like not people trying to use their own personal brand to like then sell something, like to be a spokesman. Because basically these people, like Michael Saylor is like a Bitcoin spokesman. He's like the spokesman of Bitcoin. It's not that he's not, because he's not actually building a Bitcoin business. Literally what he's doing is just buying Bitcoin with other people's money and holding it. That's literally it. And then promoting it.
Sorry to like, I saw that with Massimo, right? Like Massimo is, in my view, he has the most interesting project there. But when he was talking, it was the most like, it was the weirdest talk of all, because it felt like he was just venting, right? He was like, okay, these are the problems I had, and like I'm so frustrated, and you know, like I don't know what to do, you know, this kinds of thing, which is what you say when you're actually facing problems and you want a solution, right?
When you're actually doing,
so now it kind of clicked, right? Like if you're actually doing the thing and you're actually putting up millions and millions of dollars to do that, then you're not selling anything, right? Like none of us were customers here, right? We were all just people to bounce ideas off.
Well, and one of the things that you'll notice from people who are like actual entrepreneurs and actual engineers, right? So the people actually building things, is that when they do get up and talk, like you said, and I've seen this over and over and over, that they will tell you why you should not do this thing. Like they'll be like, look, you don't want to do this. Okay, I'm going to tell you, you're not equipped to do it. You don't have the skills to do it. If you don't have X, Y, Z, don't do this. I saw it recently. They did here in Saipan, they did an ocean aquaculture conference, right? And their first speaker was like this guy who's like, he's in Hawaii. He's one of the most accomplished kind of scientists, and they've launched a couple of businesses off of it. They've built all these sorts of things. And the last half of his presentation was just like, listen, this is going to be so difficult to do in Saipan, right? You can't use this breed of fish, this breed of fish, this breed of fish. You're not going to be able to use this type of cage, this type of cage, this type of cage. And he goes, you could maybe do rabbit fish. Here's a little shelf. And then he goes, look, you guys had one of these conferences 11 years ago and asked me to speak. And I gave you basically the same talk and nobody's done anything. And he's like, so I'm just filling it out so that I don't do this again 11 years from now. That is somebody who is actually should be speaking at the conference. Not Max Kaiser being like, Bitcoin's going to go to $5 billion. You got to buy it. Just buy. Just buy. You're stupid if you don't buy. Just buy. And it's like, no. It's the hard thing. And again, this gets back to the praxis idea, right? That it's like when you encounter, like if it was a monk, he's not going to be like, come and be a monk. He's going to be like, you know what? You are probably not equipped to be a monk. I'm going to be real with you right now. You may think it's a good idea. You may think you want to live in a monastery. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not prepared for that. You're not. Like maybe 1 out of 1,000 people will be able to make it. It's probably not you. And if it is you, you will know it to your core. You will have no doubt. If you have any doubt, don't do it.
Yes.
And that's very much, I think, it's hard for us to communicate as people who develop when it comes to Bitcoin. Like, yo, if you're not, the reason we do this is because we're really passionate about it. And it's because we're passionate that it's fun, but it's not fun. Like, it's mostly struggle.
Frustrating, yeah.
It's mostly frustration.
With the card, right? So, like I showed Will the card and the ring, and he was like so excited. He was like, like you could really see, he was really happy. So I was like, all right, like we then made like, okay, like let's do this kind of duo, right? Like I'm the POS holder, and you're like paying with the ring and so forth, and you like really loved showing that and so forth. So like we were talking to people, and they're like, oh, like look at this thing, like and maybe people would even talk like, oh, what's this red thing you're having, like the point of sale system and so forth. And then we would show them, they were like, oh, that's really cool. And then of course, like a few seconds, like we're like going back and forth, and like we're like, can I use this, and these kinds of things, and eventually it'll always be like, why don't you use Lightning? Right? Like that's the thing. And also like the idea of the stable coin, and the question that I always have is like, always like, do you have any use for this, right? Like, what is a good application for this thing I built? Like in my view, Bcash, right, the card, it's the limit of crypto, right? It's the most it's all basically solves all technical problems that crypto has, or all user experience problems that crypto has, because you put it in a form factor that literally everybody understands, right? Like you can onboard people by handing over a piece of plastic that costs like 10 cents or whatever, right? Like you solve all of these problems. Like they don't have to, in theory, they don't have to install anything, all of these things. And I'm like, I don't know, like I built this because I like, I looked into these things, and I like just solved one problem at a time. But now I'm like, okay, but like what is the problem we're trying to solve with Bitcoin, right? Like with crypto, with making our own blockchains and so forth. And and like that was the way I approached this a little bit, right? And like nobody could give me an answer, right? Like even the people who built private cities and so forth, they're like, oh yeah, that looks interesting, here's my business card, but like weren't like too interested beyond that, which is understandable, of course, because like they're trying to solve like government contracts and so forth.
I think that's kind of the point, right? Is that, and it's the difference between bear market, bull market. Like that's what's interesting, is like now we're in a bear market, and so like you said, in bull markets, we solve problems with crypto. In bear markets, we solve problems. So it's like most people don't have a problem with crypto. 99.999% of people don't have a problem with crypto, right? But in a bear market, there's a lot of capital that's looking for like the next big thing. And since investors have no vision, then what they look for is like, what's the best thing in a category? So if you're looking for investment, you look for the best thing in a category. Now, will you ever be able to actually make sales? Probably not. But will you be able to get investment? Yes, right? In the bear market, though, the question is not like, so let's take the card, for example, right? So you've got a card, you've got a POS. You take the card, you tap it on the POS, and you pay for something on the POS. Okay. But we can already do that, right? Like that, right? But that user experience exists. I did that user experience 3 times yesterday.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with crypto, right? So it's like, the problem is not, can I tap a card on a POS and the merchant views it as being paid, right? So it's cool that we get it to that point and it solves a problem with crypto, like you say, because with until then we couldn't do anything with crypto. But you go to a merchant and you provide, you offer that, and they're like, but I already have that problem solved, right? So for them, they can't see the problem, right? But you go to a merchant and you actually, they have a problem and they don't care how it's solved. Like, they would be happy to solve that problem with fiat. They would be happy to solve it with the banking system. They would be happy to solve it with physical cash, but for some reason they can't. And then you say, but I can solve this problem for you. And they don't actually care that it's crypto. So long as it solves the problem sufficient to where it doesn't, to where they can solve the problem and it doesn't influence their sort of operational flow, it doesn't throw their current operational flow off, that it can integrate with their current operational flow, boom, they're in.
Yeah, and
they're in.
even, they actually, and I had that with pay to stay, which is why I'm now focusing on that, because what it turns out is, like, the problem is, people want to do private parties, and there's like, it's a kind of trusted relationship, but there's also a lot of like people screwing each other over, because like, like this kind of like, oh, I'll pay you back next week or something, and then you just delay forever, and then you like cut contact or whatever. And then like it's bad for both sides, because then it's like, well, I just lost a customer, right? Like that kind of stuff. And because he's like afraid to, like talk to me or something. And also the legal side, right? Like some of these parties, the way they're structured currently just isn't very conducive to like the regulatory environment. Let's put it that way. And then they're like, okay, well, if we structure it this way, then like all of the problems are solved. And basically the structure pay to stay has is that it's very similar to what you did in your previous life. You're just paying for time, right? Like, it's okay, like I'm giving out my space, my room or whatever. And if you want to go here, there's a certain hourly rate that I charge for the space, or for you, like your time. And that is in a very specific regulatory environment, like a very specific kind of environment. And there it just so happens that like the current payment systems just aren't really equipped to do that, right? There's like chargeback issues. There is also like people flagging, or like or people being like which is a very interesting problem that I didn't know exists, like people like looking into the bank statements of each other and like trying to conceal that, right? Like that's a thing that's like actually super, like there's a whole industry just to like conceal payments behind something else, right? I was talking to someone who was like, oh, like we solved it, right? Like we're selling like some nonsense product, but we're actually solving these other things. Like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this seems like complete nonsense, but that is an actual problem to have.
Yes.
And then I'm looking at all of that. I'm like, oh wow, like crypto just solves all of them like kind of at once, right? Just picks them off. The only problem you have is like onboarding and off ramping.
Yep.
And that you solved with bugs. So I was presenting that to my partner, and he just was immediately sold. He was like, oh, that just solves everything, right? Like you can have these like by time payments. Okay, like this is like slowly trickling over, and we do that with an Oracle. You have the onboarding solved, and you also have the chargeback issue solved, right? Like we discussed this, and and after, like, once I saw that, I'm like, okay, now this is something I should focus my time on, because now I have someone who doesn't care at all about crypto. Actually, like they don't like crypto.
They don't care.
They got screwed over in a bull market or something, or like in a bear market.
As a matter of fact, and I've found this in the projects, because I've got some projects that are, I mean, and it's like this same problem coming up, where it's like parties that need to do a transaction that there's a lack of trust. And that there's some amount of, whether it's multi-recipients, whether it's a sort of programmable floating balance, there's all of these different kinds of things where there's no trust, and that you can't, because of the lack of trust, you can't do it in the established financial system. But if we look at it, that's the introduction to the white paper.
Right.
That's exactly the problem that Satoshi Nakamoto says Bitcoin is solving. But then you have to say, wow, here we are, we're Bitcoin developers. It should make you stop and think, right? That like, wow, here you are years into the game. You're doing pay to stay right now. Now you're doing it. And now you're realizing, oh, here are all of these problems. But then you go back and you look and you're like, wait, that's what Satoshi wrote in the white paper. And then you look at the lack of individuals who are trying to solve any of those problems, right? Like you and I are probably some of the few people. And as a matter of fact, some structures that have been built like Lightning make it so that you can't solve those problems.
Yes.
Like you can't even solve these problems we're talking about using the Lightning Network. It prohibits you from using Bitcoin to solve these problems, which is insane.
Now they're talking about how you could possibly do stable coins, like the Tarot thing or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, now we're just back to square one, right? Like even beyond that, right?
But it's still just the structure of it. The fact that it's, that you've got this multi-hop routing to a single output.
Yeah.
Right. To a single destination. It's like you've basically blown apart everything.
Well, but Vin, you can do submarine swaps.
This is so dumb. This is so dumb. It's like after
I heard that term, like my brain just shuts off. I'm like, okay, like can I just go back to eCash? Right? Like, what are we talking about?
Well, they don't even understand. They're just like, hey, what's the new? They're listening to whatever podcast, they're reading whatever thing. Oh, submarine swaps. Okay, I'm adding that in. Submarine swaps. Somebody says something that Lightning can't do, and they just go submarine swaps. It's just and you're like, what is this? What is this weird religion? What is this weird thing where they just throw this out? And you're like, what are you talking about? And these are people who aren't actually trying to solve the problem. And it's like, this to me is both the hopeful side and also the frustrating side. Because, and it's like,
but that's entrepreneurship, those two things, right?
Well, I'm talking specifically about the crypto fanboying.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I don't want to be tagged in any like XCC fanboying. I'm tired of this. Stop tagging me. You know what I mean?
I accidentally, like, someone sent me a transaction on chain to my Electrum ABC, and it like popped up, and I looked at it, and there was like some promotion in there, and then I tweeted that, and I was like, oh, like, look what I just got. Like the what is it? Processing we are processing was a mistake, which is like the first paper in but then like it immediately invited all of the people, and I was okay, like let me delete that. That was a mistake on my end.
So like, this is the big problem, and one of the reasons I hate to see it evolving, because it's like, it's a way of confusing motion with progress, and it's what I saw in BCH. And like, initially I fell for it because anybody would, because it's like attention. Human beings like attention.
BCH?
Of course, yeah. Human beings like attention, but at the same time,
because you took your investment in Context in BCH, right?
Well, I mean, it wasn't about the investment. It was more about like, you announce, hey, I'm doing this thing. And then there's all these fanboys who are like, yeah, whoa, wonderful, to the moon, BCH, blah, blah, blah. And there's they have no way of judging whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. You could have just shit on a plate, you know, like at the end of the day. And that was one of the big reasons why BCH corrupted and fell apart, was because it didn't matter that someone was doing something that wasn't novel, didn't solve a problem. It's just that it was done on BCH, even if it was derivative of something and duplicative of something and unneeded and whatever. Oh, this person, well, the greatest person contributing so much and doing all this. And it's just like, if everything is on the same level, that's why we never, because there's no, and any critique was only ever a critique that was like just from fanboys from another thing, like, oh, it's just shitcoin, it's blah, blah, blah. It wasn't somebody being like, well, what problem does this solve? Like, what are we doing? Is your time best spent on this? Like, you're a talented engineer, you know, like, is your time best spent on this thing? And what do you end up getting? You end up getting people who actually could be working to solve these problems, building bullshit, quite honestly. And it takes so long. Now, at the same time, I'm rather hopeful in that regard because it's a great filter. The people who actually are building things that actually do solve problems, they're few and far between. There's only a handful of them. And it's like, if they've gotten, then that means that they've been able to filter that out. If they've gotten to the point where they're actually building these things and they really stand out, you know, and that's,
you can detect them easily.
Easy.
The way they speak. Yeah. The way they.
Easy. And they're liminal people. They're liminal people is what they are. Right. And I've found myself, and that's been interesting.
I think this is how we found each other, right?
Sure.
It's like you were like, we were trying to solve the exact same problem. We, of course, taking different angles and different routes and whatever, but like you were like, okay, let's go the SMS route. I was like, okay, like let me imitate the card or whatever. And now we're at like completely different places, right? Like, but it is like, that is where it kind of logically took us. And yeah, and I think,
well, it's the praxis.
Yeah.
Right. Because like if you actually do the praxis, you wind up basically in the same place, no matter where you approach it. Like, here's your destination. You approach it like this, you wind up in the same place. And what you realize is like, there's this, you get to the point and you're like, oh, something's missing here, because you actually did the praxis. It's like coming to Saipan, actually putting point of sales into places, actually going and paying, actually talking to customers, as few as they were. You just run into the same thing over and over. How do we onboard? How do we offboard? How do we onboard? How do we offboard? How do we onboard? How do we offboard? And volatility. You saw the volatility first, right? Stable coins. Okay, boom. Once that's done, you're like, whoa, look at that big impediment took away. Right. It's like, oh, I get to go to the next level. And then it's like onboard, offboard. How do we onboard, offboard? And it's like, well, they want cash. They want cash immediately. They want me to give them cash. And it's like, okay, I can do that, but that doesn't scale.
And it's also like there's MSB, right? Like
on the scale. Yeah. I mean, well, that we got a license here, right? So that was the solution here was it was easy to get an MSB license, so you get an MSB license.
Where for the merchants, actually the KYC is not an issue at all, right? They probably even like it. It's like, well, like you're just gonna like what form do I have to sign, right? We just do this on a like basis, like a
it's easy. It's easy. And I mean the reporting that you have but again, it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale.
Yeah.
Right. So then what you got to be like, okay, how do I onboard and offboard and take away this friction, right? How do I do it in a way that can scale?
And it's even worse for pay to stay, because those are not like super professional people. They're like, oh, I want to do a party or whatever, right? Like they want to
exactly.
Right. Like it has to be quick.
So these are and speed is another aspect of it, right? So these are all of the things that you have to consider. Those things have to be built, but before you can even consider them, you have to understand the nature of the problem. And you have to understand it at a pretty deep and personal level, and that requires praxis. That requires you having actually walked down the path. And what's the unfortunate thing of most of crypto is that even if you bring up these sorts of, first off, if you bring up that these are problems, people don't even understand the nature of the problem. And so the people who are the fanboys throw out all this bullshit, to be honest. well, what if you did a blah, blah, blah? And it's like, no. So then you just stop talking. That's what I've stopped doing.
Yeah.
Right. Is that it's like, I just stopped.
Or you put it
talking.
in a focused space, right? Like,
well, yeah, you publish protocols, whatever, get things going.
Well, no. What you're doing with Bitcoin Mystery School is basically you're giving your wisdom, but for a price, right? Like, you're not trying to convince anyone. You're like, okay, there are these people who are interested in this. Let me teach them. But
I don't teach them those. I don't teach them those things, and that's what I'm saying is like those. Bitcoin Mystery School is a great, and I've really pulled back even on that now, right? Because it's a wonderful introduction, wonderful community. But my real interest was to see to do the continued courses, right? So like the wallet class, and then to see who comes out of the wallet class to actually it's basically like an incubator to try to see, what could I like not maybe manufacture, but could I like find right other people, because we need more people who are actually going to build these solutions, right? And like out of Bitcoin Mystery School, out of I think over 400 students total over the course of it all, and the secondary classes, and then like basically 2 people emerged. Two people who actually like went through the entire process, did all of the things, and then now I'm working with and who are actually building like useful things to help solve problems, right? 2 out of 400. And that's 2 out of 400 that are already self-selected to be potentially those people, right? So it's out of the mass of people that then down to 400 who would actually pay to be in the course, down to, the maybe 5% of that who would pay to be in the wallet course. Maybe it was more than that. Maybe it's 20% of that who would pay to be in the wallet course. Then out of the 2 from that who actually finished up all the things in the wallet course and then completed this basically like a self-guided challenge, right? That's like their master's thesis or whatever, right? That they're going to do that 2, so that's very interesting, right? It's very interesting because at the end of the day, it's like, well, really the knowledge that I have is really for 2 people. Because everybody else is just a user. At the end of the day, everybody else is just a user. The people who are that 400, they're going to be like first adopters. So that's good. It's good to have those people, right? Because that's kind of your first customers.
Yes.
Right. So it's nice to have those people. They actually know why it's valuable. But the people who are actually going to build the things that are not yet built, that's the number of people that it is. Incredibly small. The unfortunate part, though, is the noise around crypto is making it harder for those people. Because it's the noise around crypto that is creating the more regulations, that's creating, we were talking about like purposely staying hidden, liminal places purposely staying hidden. You've got a problem. Yeah, right? Like you've got a problem.
Crypto, I think it's Greek and it means hidden. And the current crypto is like as much in your face as possible. So which is why
and 90% of what's in your face is a lie.
Yeah.
It isn't even like what Bitcoin is. It isn't even what crypto is what they're regulating against it.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Which plays for us, right? Like when I read maybe a little bit, like when I read the MiCA law in the EU, it's designed very specifically for exchanges, right? And there are a lot of unregulated exchanges and so forth. And they use specifically only words that exchanges would use, right? Like they talk about crypto assets. They talk about like key, like how should a key be like for a custodian, like what kind of guarantees you have to make and so forth. And like I'm reading this and like none of this applies to me, right? Like I'm like it's, and I just think it'll take a very, very long time until so maybe that is actually what's going on. It's like this play between the state and people confused about crypto, like this dance of like, okay, like what will this end up to? And maybe it'll give something that's distracting people so we can actually build these non-custodial this intermediate financial technology kind of stuff.
Well, I think probably some of this civilizational collapse that we're witnessing will be, and I don't know whether it'll be a place like, I have a feeling that there is great opportunity in the Pacific, because there are, there's trade-offs, obviously, because the elites of someplace like CNMI or Palau or Federated States of Micronesia, who seem to be interested in these types of things, but the elites here are not super sophisticated on technological things because they don't necessarily have to be. And also very beholden to outside developed powers to generate,
like
their vassals, right? To generate income for them. And so there isn't, certainly from the elites, there isn't a big entrepreneurial spirit for the most part. There is from like the immigrant population. So like Saipan is 40% Filipino. And that being here, that like most of the little businesses and whatever, it's either Filipinos, Chinese, or Koreans.
Yeah, mostly interacted with those people. Not really interacted too much with Chamorro. I did, of course. But it wasn't when I was like doing anything bigger, like it was usually of the others.
Yeah, Filipino, Chinese, Korean, some Japanese, right? And mainlanders. So it's like it's the outsiders who do that. And that's the same here. But when some of that stuff starts to dry up coming from outside, these are places that have a great deal of freedom of what they do internally, right? They don't have a lot of people to answer to, and it's very easy for them to look the other way on something that makes a lot of sense for them, right? So if it's making sense, it's easy for them to be like, oh, we didn't know that was going on, right? Like, and this has happened historically here in Saipan. I mean, that was actually some of the big scandals that have happened here in Saipan have been like them being like, oh, we didn't know. Like, even though it's like, well, no, you got paid or whatever.
Like sweatshops and whatever.
Sweatshops, the casino, like, but this is just it's something that happens. And I think that there's great opportunity in, again, liminal spaces. So it's not just in the Pacific, but I mean, there's places like this in Europe, there's places in Asia, there's certainly aspects of this in Africa, no doubt about
absolutely.
it.
No, I heard a lot because
South America.
Space.
South America, same sort of situation. Central America,
and what's her name? Angela, like the moderator for the ECC. Like she had like great ideas for like some community banking or whatever. And I actually think that will like we have bugs, but I think there's a big opportunity for something that looks like a community bank or like fulfills a similar role, but it's actually a just like legally speaking, not and like these are all the things we built. Like it looks very much like X and it feels like X, but it isn't that at all legally speaking. So I'm curious what you think about that idea, like of like, let's say you have some big like one, like let's take the example of a like the electricity company, like something where like businesses are customers of, or like where basically everyone is a customer, so they can always use that. What the electricity company could now do is act as a community bank to be like, hey, I'm giving out this loan. I'm going to take an interest on that, and the loan will be like I'm giving that out, and it's going to be a token, right? It can be a self-minted token and so forth in order to enable that. What do you think about that? Is that something that we'll see of like businesses minting tokens as like a as a means of giving out like especially if traditional banks are lowering their like or like CBDCs will become the new like way to get loans and so forth, and we already like we will see that, and it's going to be woke and ESG. But do you think there's going to be from just private businesses who are like, okay, like this is a token, you can use it, and it's going to fulfill similar roles as credit money these days?
Why would they? I mean, so why would they issue a token? What are they trying to do here?
So, for example, like I'm just having a like more or less a concrete example, because this is actually something that might be done. Is a like there's a Canadian who has a electricity company in Honduras, and he's a little bit interested in that. So what he could do is be like, hey, you can buy electricity with this token, right? It's going to be whatever. But we got this payment infrastructure, so you can pay your supplies, you can pay your employees, you can pay basically the whole town using this token, and we are giving you a loan because you have like maybe some construction project that you want to do, you want to scale your own business, right? Therefore, like we act as a community bank, right? Like we know you, like we have a personal relationship and everything, like we know that. And instead of you going to the bank, which is very, very difficult, or like taking a loan with like family or whatever, we just act as this person who's providing trust. So you can do your construction project or whatever. People can use our currency, like you can pay people in our currency, and it's valuable because like everyone needs electricity. So that's kind of the idea that the and what's in for the electricity companies that like, okay, now this creates more businesses, and more business, or like more business needs more electricity, therefore we have more customers, that kind of thing. It's like like to leverage their position, kind of.
So there's, I mean, this is kind of similar to the to the early colonial paper money, like the things that Benjamin Franklin was involved in. In that case, it was the state that made the loan, and they used property. You use your property as collateral. And the idea was that because everybody needed to pay taxes, right, to the colonial government, then you could use it to pay taxes, and therefore everybody would accept it. There is, when we're talking about this in a digital format, there starts to become a chicken and an egg. It's not clear whether or not electricity is like, whether or not electricity would make, whether it would make sense to do electricity this way. I think this needs to be thought out a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's different when it's government, because the government doesn't actually need, like, they don't actually need the taxes. So if you think about the way, that this thing works, like the way it's designed by Benjamin Franklin. If people want to look it up, it's called The Nature and Necessity of Paper Currency. It's written in 1723, I want to say. Nature, you can look it up, you can find it. Written by Benjamin Franklin. He was, of course, the first person to really print paper money effectively. He printed it for Pennsylvania, he printed it for New Jersey. It was the model that he created that was then his partner actually printed the first continental dollars that were used to fund the US, the United States, basically the American Revolution, right? The American Revolution was funded with paper money. So, and it's a really, I mean, the way that it was used is pretty incredible, and it really worked. People, for some reason, there's been a lot of lies about the continental dollar, about like it inflated to a point where it was worthless and all of this, and that's actually not true. It had this redeem schedule that was like staggered, and that was the reason. Anyway, it's a long thing, but it's a very interesting thing to look into. The thing with, if you do it with the government, why it worked with Ben Franklin and doing it with the government is like, so you imagine, so here's this paper currency, you've got this land, right? I say, okay, I'm going to issue you this paper currency. You're going to put up the land as mortgage. You actually have to return back the paper currency and silver, right? Because obviously you have to return back the entire amount. So you imagine if I only have loaned out 1,000 of these paper currencies, you can pay it back in either silver or the paper currency. But everybody needs to pay taxes, right? So this will get distributed around, and up until the point when people have already paid all of their taxes, they will accept these. So if I've got some, it starts to get in there, and up to the point where people have paid their taxes, they'll accept these, right? So if I owe $200 in taxes, and you're like, hey, dude, I've got 300 of these notes that I'll pay you for your goods, I'll take 200 and say, I'll take 200 of those, and then I need 100 in silver. So you can see how this, or maybe I'll take 300 and then I'll take the 100 and I'll go and I'll spend those. So it starts to get distributed until the taxes are there. So the first issue that you have on this is is electricity enough of an expense that for all the loans you're going to make, it will be even worth it for people to accept them up to the point of their electricity bill, right? So
like
that's the first
operational cost.
Right. Is the operational cost of me accepting this, which means, because unlike the paper, if it's digital, there's an entire infrastructure that I now need to have, right, in order to accept this. So you've got to set me up with that infrastructure too. So is the operational cost of me getting set up, understanding how to do it and everything, does that equal out to how it's worth it for me to accept this up to this amount, even like cognitively, is it worth it? Okay. The second part is, what do you do if somebody defaults? See, if it's the government, it's very easy. They just take your land. Right? It's like you put up the land as mortgage. Now we take your land. And then what the government has no intermediary to taking your land. They literally send men with guns, which belong to them, kick you off your land, change the title in their title office, and put it up for auction. And when they put it up for auction, they get silver for it. So even if so imagine what they just did in this case. Like, what's the worst case scenario for them? The worst case scenario is you take all the money, they never see it back, but they will, right, for other people's taxes. But you miss a little bit, they take your land, they auction it off, and they get silver. They're not going to take the paper in exchange for the auction, right?
Yes.
If you're an electric company, the first thing you have to say is, what's the collateral?
Yeah. So there could
you're making a loan. What's the collateral?
Or there could be something like that, but it would probably
be
difficult to enforce. No.
Exactly. So now there's the land, but you're not actually giving them money, right? So now a court is going to look at this and be like, wait a minute. You're giving them credit on something that you set the price of yourself, right? So here's the market price. You gave them credit. There's a whole rigmarole of things. And then you got to say, well, is the cost of them enforcing, getting the collateral, even worth it? And in most cases, unless the loan is huge and the collateral is a bunch of land that they can actually use, because then there's also a cost of putting it to auction, getting it ready for auction, getting it auctioned, and then getting the money. And it's like, after you've done all of this, in the worst case scenario, is it worth it to you, or did you just have a loss? Right? Then you have the what's different than the state is, the state, whether it gets the taxes or not, right, off of these things, it's like, well, it got the taxes or not, and there's still this land sitting here that they could take, right? And when Ben Franklin did it, there were no taxes. There was no economic activity happening anyway. It wasn't like a substitute. The entire reason why he did it was to spur economic activity, because there was a lack of money in the colonies, like actual supply of money that could be used in the colonies. There was no supply of money. There was no money. So they were stuck with barter. All of the money was being used for international trade. It was locked away. There wasn't enough silver, like actually on the ground, for them to use. So people couldn't hire people to work the land. So immigrants stopped coming. People self-deported who were just laborers and whatnot, because you just simply couldn't pay somebody. You could pay them in chickens or this or that. People didn't want to do that. So the economic activity died. As soon as they introduced this paper money, the weird thing about it was the economic activity picked back up. Right? So it was just to spur the economic activity, which then ended up bringing in more silver too, which then the government got in taxes. So it was a win-win no matter how they did it. But the problem is the electric company actually has costs. When they sell electricity, they're selling it to you. There's a profit margin there, but it costs them to deliver that electricity to you. And the more of these loans you put out, the less actual hard currency you have coming back. How do you pay the costs?
Yeah, that's a very good take. So this might be
it's
more
all
interesting.
losses. It's all losses across the board. This is a bad move.
So this might be more interesting.
Whoever's doing this should look up the history of Benjamin Franklin, the currencies, read that paper. There's also a guy called Rawls Read his paper. It's about how the colony of Delaware can get rich. Read that. That's what inspired Franklin. And yeah, they need to do a little more work and research on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this might be more interesting for like you know, like places like Morazon or like you know, places that actually do charge taxes that actually have that. Okay, yeah, I'll take that into account. So this might be more interesting for example, Morazon.
Well,
because
money
they charge 5% income tax or something. Yeah.
Yeah, money is valuable because governments charge tax for it.
Yeah.
Period. Right? So it's like that's just the fact. Universal demand to pay for payment of taxes at the point of a sword is what makes money valuable. It's why people desire, it's why people want to have money. That's what bootstraps money is, taxes. Right? So any sort of thing that looks like a tax, that looks like tax, right? So even in a private city, it could be like some
mall.
Yeah, some rent that everybody has to pay.
Yeah.
It could be a HOA fee, right? A homeowners association fee.
Yeah.
Like
so
some mandatory rent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because rent could also, like, there's huge, like, whatever, like spaces where like you have to pay a lot. And this is actually the model that like Morazon also uses, because like they do not sell any plot because they don't want to get into like they do not want to have homeowner associations. They're like, no, like if we have someone who is causing trouble, like, you know, they can stay there, but we will not renew their like rent contract, whatever. And this way it's like very uncomplicated, right? Like you're not in breach of contract. You don't have to disintermediate a lot, right? Like maybe you're like, well, if you don't fix this, we won't renew your contracts.
So if everybody has that there, you've got the ability to bootstrap money.
Yeah.
You've got the ability to bootstrap money in that case, because you have some sort of universal thing that if you don't pay it, something will be enforced against you with violence. That gives that gives universal demand. And money is that good that has universal demand. So first you got to bootstrap the universal demand. If you already have universal demand for some sort of payment, then you can bootstrap money.
Oh, and we almost had that in Saipan, right? It was like you can pay your taxes in
well, that's why we went for that.
Yeah.
Right. That was the whole reason for going for it. It's like, well, if you want people to accept crypto, especially here, since they have a business tax that is called a business gross revenue tax. So it's like you pay it on your gross revenue. So meaning universal demand. So it's like, yes, will you accept it at point of sale? Can I pay my BGRT with it? Yes. Oh,
yeah, I'll take that.
Absolutely, because I have to pay that, and it's monthly. You have to pay it every month here, right? So it's actually the perfect environment. If the government said, yes, we will, which they eventually will, right? I'm going to be here for decades. So eventually it will happen here. Well, and then at that point, it's a very easy sell.
Like we like this tax thing was around for quite a while on Saipan. However, what we didn't solve was the on-ramp issue, right? And we did solve that with bugs. One idea that Will and I have been like kind of going back and forth in Prague was the idea of a Bucks Bcash card. Like if that would solve an issue in Saipan, right? Like where you, like instead of setting up a wallet, like going to the thing and so forth, you would just buy a card and then either load the auth code or like the tokens onto the card, or you would mint, or like it would have authorization code on the card. I'm not sure if it does solve a problem. Maybe you see something there.
Well, I don't know. Have you used Bucks lately? Like, have you seen what a point of sale looks like lately?
I don't think I've used the point of sale.
Yeah, so we should do a little thing where you can use the point of sale. So how it works now, there's no setting up of a wallet. So we're using a wallet in a completely sort of new way, right? So it's a fork of CashTab, but essentially the flow,
I've minted tokens using that, but it basically like it goes to the you set up a like you do set up a wallet, but you empty it immediately, right? Like that's the idea.
No. So that's not how it works now. Yeah, you've got to see what people are doing at the point of sale. You walk in, you scan a QR code on the point of sale. It immediately opens up the wallet. If you don't have a wallet in your browser, it creates a brand new empty wallet for you right there. You don't even, and people don't even know it's a wallet. Inside the wallet, you can buy your Mint Auth code with PayPal inside the wallet or credit card. You can actually put your credit card onto that page. It's the same page. It doesn't leave the page. You press pay, you do your PayPal, it mints it automatically in the background, puts it into your wallet, and then it's just one button that says send. You hit send and it goes bing. It takes about 15 seconds.
Wow.
So most of the people who are using it don't even know they're using crypto. To them, they're just paying paying PayPal on their phone, and it stays on the same page. It doesn't leave the page. It doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't go to multiple things in the wallet. They don't know that it's a wallet. If they lose their cookies from after that, that's fine. They only need to have the wallet open with the cookies for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You immediately send the tokens out. But
that's... yeah, it's all sent. So like a card would actually, I mean, how are you going to be? Somebody walks in, never
bit, right?
Yeah, it's like you've never heard of bucks, you've never heard of crypto, and I mean that's what it was built to be. So it's like tourists coming in from Korea. I can see their payments coming in, right? Tourists coming in from Korea where they're just like, oh, do you have a smartphone? Yeah. They're like, oh, do you have a smartphone? And they're like, okay, just scan this, and the staff doesn't even have to tell them what to do. It's so obvious. It just, oh, it opens. Oh, pay with PayPal. Oh, credit card. Okay, type in their credit card. Send. Wait a minute. Send. Bing, paid, done. Right?
And it's like in computer science, we call that intuitive.
It's intuitive. Yeah.
You need no explanation.
No explanation, no experience with crypto. You don't care that you're using crypto. You don't care. And then Bucks has a dashboard where the merchants just offboard, right? And they can do that to PayPal, they can do it ACH, they can do it international wire, and it's all automatic. You know, they do the signatures, and I'm even going to make that process more streamlined by the end of the month, right? Because now I've had enough merchants now offboarding that they've given me feedback on, well, this is a little slow, and I wish I didn't have to do this. It's still pretty fast. It's still, you can offboard in, I mean, I've got a video where I onboard and offboard, and the entire video is 5 minutes long. Right? I onboard and offboard, and I'm speaking over it. If people go to dashboard.bucks.com, they can see the walkthrough, right?
Yeah, you sent that.
Yeah. So it's like it's 5 minutes. Right? So meaning both the onboarding and the offboarding is a total of 5 minutes while I'm slowly going through and explaining it. Once a merchant's done it like these merchants do it every month, you know what I mean? Once they've done it a few times, they can cash out in, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes.
The KYC once they know how to do it. The KYC for Kraken for my business took 2 weeks, right? So that's
same. We went through a whole process here for a Kraken business account where they were like, well, we just need to see some document that has a street address. And I'm like, we don't have street addresses here.
Well,
and I just went back and no street addresses.
Not even street address.
I don't have a street. I mean, I guess there's a street name. But there's no street numbers, right? Like physical address. And so they were like, well, we need a bank statement with the physical address. And I'm like, well, the banks don't use physical addresses here. Like, well, a utility bill with physical address. And I'm like, that's not on the utility bill. Even the utility company doesn't have, here's the bill. Look, the utility company has like a PO box, you know what I mean, as their address. And so, yeah, man, it's this, that's solving a problem, isn't it? To where it's like, yeah, the onboarding, the real problem with the onboarding of crypto has been, it's custodial. It's custodial. So you got to go through all these custodial things. And it was like, no, everybody was like, well, how could we streamline the custodial thing? Absolutely nobody was like, well, how could we actually do this in a non-custodial way? Is that even possible? And so it's like, yeah, it's a different category.
Yeah, that makes sense, because Bucks is like, well, you know, like this thing just exists on the chain. We can give you a code to make your own token. Right?
That's it. Make your own token. Yeah. Which is the power of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We haven't scratched the surface on all of the things that can be done with Bitcoin, because you don't scratch the surface until you come to the problem. Right. So I think that this is where it's like, instead of a solution looking for a problem, which is what most of crypto is. Oh, how can we do this with a smart contract though? How can we involve a smart contract in this situation?
In Davos, I saw this, like, well, you can talk to us and we can find how blockchain can help your business. I'm like, okay, well, like,
this is the dumbest thing,
right?
This is the dumbest thing. How blockchain? No, that's a solution looking for a problem.
Exactly.
No, you tell me your problem, and then I'm going to be like, well, that's either a problem I can solve or I can't solve. And maybe I'll solve it with crypto. But dude, there's a lot of times when people will reach out to me because they know what I'm doing, and they'll just be like, well, we're looking to do this, 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 and this. And I'll be like, oh, well, you can just set up your PayPal to do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, just set up your PayPal. Like, and then it's like, oh, the problem is solved.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't make any money off of it, but like, that's the right approach. Right? Because I'm not doing them any favor if I'm like, oh, you could solve this with PayPal, but I don't just tell them how to solve it with PayPal.
So here's another, like, I'm just bouncing off ideas.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So like, when I extrapolate, like, there might come a time where PayPal is like, yes, this is not MSB, but we don't like that. Like, we just don't like your face or whatever. Like, that's how they work. Like, we'll just take 2,500 because you tweeted the wrong thing or whatever. And so one thing that I had in mind, which already is like a little bit existing, but it's not very streamlined, is like, this could be for like streamers or whatever, right? Like, I have a pool of people who, like, I don't have them, but like, I know there could be a group of people who could benefit from this. They're like streamers, and they need to take donations or whatever, right? Like some kind of super chat or some kind of interaction and so forth. And they're getting deplatformed. There's entropy and so forth, like places where you can have like secondary stuff, but it's still fully custodial. So one thing that I thought about is like, and there's like, one solution to that is actually just put up a Amazon wish list, right? Like, you put up an Amazon wish list, people can buy the stuff, and then it's like a donation, but it's very like clunky. It's basically barter, right? At the end of the day,
what about just a QR code of a Bitcoin address?
Well, yes, but then how do normies who don't have Bitcoin get that? Right? Like,
well, then a QR code of a Bucks address.
Yeah, but then like I'm just yes, that would be the solution, but I'm extrapolating. Okay, what if Bucks causes issues, right? Like, what if PayPal causes issues with that, right? So one thought I had is that you put up your wish list, but it can be offline, right? Like, you're not streaming, you're not whatever, but it's there. And once you fulfill the wish list, you get a token, maybe self-minting or whatever, that you then can redeem later during the stream, if that makes sense. What
are you trying to what is the problem you're trying to solve here?
You want to receive a donation without going through a financial institution, right? Or like say you don't want to have a bank intermediating the payments. So what you do is like, someone buys you the stuff you want to buy. Right?
Well, like, why don't you want to have a bank intermediating the payments?
Because they're they're shutting down stuff or something, right? Like, they're like deplatforming you.
I mean, have you been has this person been deplatformed from a bank?
Oh yeah, there's been problems there. Yeah, they have. And Bucks might solve that. Right? Like, this is the thing, but like, there's a reason they've been deplatformed from the streaming, right? Like, I could go into detail why exactly, but like, that's not really the point.
So really, you've got a bigger issue, right? So you have to approach it from, you're going from the buyer side to the recipient, or from the donator to the recipient. But you need to go, if the real problem you're trying to solve is that this person has been deplatformed, you need to actually go the other direction. You need to start with offboarding first. because if they've been deplatformed from the banks, it's going to be difficult to solve this with crypto because they need to offboard.
Yeah, but that's what I do with the wish list, right? Basically, they
get sent something via Amazon.
Yeah.
And then what are they going to do? They're going to return it for credits in their Amazon account, or what are they going to do?
This is literally what they want, right? These are literally products that they need, right? Basically, other people buy their stuff to their home because, like, that's exactly what we do with the money, right? It's like I need products, and currently they do that. It's just that it's very like direct. It's almost like barter. It's like
okay, so what's the so somebody buys something, they get it. Great, wonderful, wish list. Okay, thank you very much. What's the I don't understand the token part.
So yeah, exactly, because like you want to, like, maybe sometimes you have a wish but you don't immediately have someone to buy it or whatever. So what you can do is like you can have someone fulfill that order while you're offline, whatever. And then you get the token, and then later during the stream you can do the donation through the token. And then you can also use the token.
That it shows. You're saying so that it shows up during the stream.
Yeah, exactly. You can, like, thank you so much for like the 100 bits or whatever, right?
So the problem that you're trying to solve, well, I would say, like, first you need to like name who these people would be, right? And then you need to talk to those people. Right? And you need to be like, is this a problem that you have, and would this solve your problem? I think first through the Amazon wish list, because it's two different things, right? So it's like, and what is that even the best way to solve, like, is a token even the best way to solve this issue? Like, might just a centralized database that just has the person's name, and then the streamer during the stream could, or maybe it's not even a token. Maybe it's just like, you just give them a link, right? And the streamer just has this thing open, and there's just this link that they could just click on the link. It's a one-time click during the stream, and they click on the link. Yeah, the stream is open. Click the link, and then it just boop pops the thing. Like, it seems to me that a token is added complexity to something where all you're trying to do is display their name on a screen during the stream. Which is going to have to be done through some API anyway, whether you're using the token or not.
One idea I had is, because like at the end of the day, all of these things are not very scalable, right? Because like you have people who, like, you have to match people, and then sometimes it doesn't add up with the wish list, and like there's more demand than supply, or like vice versa, or something like that. And what I thought is that, like, if you have like a pool of these people, then they could accept each other's token and then settle the debt between the tokens, something like that. I
mean, I think I love Michael Seibel, Y Combinator. I mean, over and over and over, I say it's like, you want to work on a problem. The problems that you want to work on are, you want to see, are they ubiquitous, meaning that how many people have it? Are they frequent? How often do they have it? Are they severe? Meaning it's really, really hardcore severe. And so, like, I think at the moment, streamers who are completely cut off from the banking system, PayPal, and all of that is not really ubiquitous.
It's not, and
my feeling is that it will never be.
Yeah, because this is something I know. Did you watch the FedNow video from the Federal Reserve? You know FedNow?
I don't know. I know FedNow. I don't know if I watched a video about it. I mean, I read all the recent like press releases and things that they put out. What specifically was in the video?
No, they have a website, and on there is like, oh no, watch our video, and it's specifically targeted towards. It's not targeted towards like normies at all, right? It's like targeted to like people who are in the payments space, right? And very much so. And they, like, one thing that I just picked up is that they were talking about, oh, this thing is important for the gig economy, like whatever gig economy actually means. But they specifically used that word, which actually, like, I mean, I'm not English, but it sounds a little colloquial. Or it seems like, but it seems like they're targeting a specific kind of area that I think might be notorious for having trouble with banking. So I think what they're doing is they are actually solving the actual problems that using a CBDC that current banking has. Right? It's like these kinds of things. So
Well,
that's kind of
I
what
think
I'm
it's
seeing.
less about they have problems with banking per se. Like gig economy is like Uber, somebody who's driving for, it's usually drivers really is kind of the gig economy is what you would think about, like who are independent contractors. I think it's more about the time that like the friction in those people receiving funds for the rides that they've, so you imagine Uber, right? So there's a great deal of friction between, you know, you do some Uber for like, it's a trip, it's like $6 or something like that. And then like, that's got to get into your bank account. So it's got to go in, it's got to, credit card's got to be processed. It's got to go into Uber's bank account. It's got to go through their payment processor. Then it's got to go through whatever like processing system they're using to send out to all of, there's an accounting thing and to send out to all of these recipients. And I think FedNow, the idea is that there will be streamlining within that process and the friction in terms of the cost will be greatly reduced, right? So that, you know, this driver could potentially, the cost would be low enough that Uber could just immediately send the driver, they could just route it and immediately send the driver their portion at a very, very low cost. So then it would just kind of like, they'd get it in their bank account immediately, you know, as opposed to, I don't know. I've never drove Uber, so I don't know. But I'm assuming that
like a month or whatever to get the payment.
Yeah, it's probably like every 30 days or every. It's probably with Uber, it's less than that. It's probably like every 15 days, right? And then you know you cash out, and it might take between 1 and 5 days to get into your bank account. So there's a lot of friction there. And for somebody who's not making a ton of money, the difference in, you know, having the money today or having to wait 2 weeks, that's a big deal. You know, that's a really big deal. And so I could see why they would say that it's for the gig economy. But I do know FedNow is really about streamlining interbank payments for the most part, right? And payments between payment processors, getting it much cheaper than it is. There's a lot of costs in settlement because everybody's got to take their pound of flesh, you know?
Don't you think FedNow is like, okay, we're solving this problem right now with the interbanking, but this allows us to have the infrastructure to like bootstrap a CBDC.
Well, they're kind of two different things. I mean, at least the way they're being designed in the US. I think in other places they're being designed differently, but the CBDC is, you know, it's one ledger. And at the commercial level as well. I think FedNow, I don't think that it streamlines if it ever gets implemented fully, but it streamlines the US commercial banking, you know, back and forth. I mean, it's a lot closer to what is being offered by Zelle now in the US for US bank accounts. So like I'll send money to my wife, right? From like out of my bank account, I'll send to my wife's bank account using Zelle. And it like she basically gets all the money. I don't think there's any interbank fee. And it's pretty much instant. It's like within like 20 seconds, she'll get a notification and she can spend it like in her bank account. That's like, that's awesome. You know? And so FedNow is just, I think, sort of an iteration of that. Zelle is really, you know, it's this sort of consumer thing and it's between only certain banks. Only certain banks have Zelle, you know, the big commercial banks. FedNow will give the capability for every bank that's on ACH or whatever, every US bank, you'll be able to send between accounts that fast. So it's different. It's an improvement on the current paradigm, whereas the CBDC is an entirely new paradigm. But it'll get people used to the UX potentially.
Yeah. And
right?
And you can always like add, okay, now, you know, like you automatically have a CBDC wallet in FedNow as well. And
Sure.
And you can immediately send from CBDC to any bank and you can immediately go from bank to CBDC, and like just the whole thing is just very integrated.
Yeah, that's what the Bank of International Settlements is. That's what their Project Arum or whatever. That's really what they're looking at. That's what they envision. So they envision two separate systems: CBDC system and a CBDC backed stablecoin system. And the banks will be able to issue their own CBDC backed stablecoins.
Okay.
And that enables, so basically you could, so they're envisioning that the CBDC will be primarily settlement between banks and the central bank, and the stablecoin will be issued by individual banks, but it could be shared, it could be a universally like that, and they could accept each other's, right? And then the banks can settle the stablecoin with CBDC. They can basically just burn it out, but the banks hold the CBDC, and the stablecoin is what the banks use for basically moving around commercial paper.
That's very similar to how banking currently works, right? Like,
yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
It is.
That's
it is. It is. But it just changes the rails significantly. And they're basically using like a proof of authority network. That's what they envision. So consumers could have CBDC wallets. They could. But it'd be like a separate, when they show the wallet, like the stable coin is separate from the CBDC.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because like there's two kinds of CBDCs. There's the retail CBDCs and wholesale CBDCs. Like they're a little confusing, the terms. But yeah, those are the two. Like one is used just for interbanking, and the other one is actually used in commerce directly. And yeah, what makes me a little bit optimistic is that I think that like the second one is the one that I'm actually like afraid of, because that is where like the big control, the like that part comes in, especially like when you're like we just like the central bank just deleted your account, like your money, it's just gone, it's that kind of stuff. But I think it'll take quite a while until that is actually what people do use, and it'll like there will have to be a lot of pressure, similar to like the the COVID vaccine, that kind of stuff. Like,
well, we'll see. I mean, I think it's primed. I think it could happen a lot faster than most people expect. It's all about how cold this winter is. Right? It's all about how many people freeze to death, and it's all about how well, and even the people that don't freeze to death, how many people are just in incredible discomfort, how many have to watch their children be cold, and then, I mean, the speed with which everything CBDC is, I don't think people appreciate. Like, this was something so 1 year ago you never heard come out of the mouth of leaders, and now it's like, the new prime minister, Rishi Sunak is about to be, prime minister, and he's talking about, CBDCs, and it's like, whoa, like, okay, this was something no one was talking about, that everybody was like, well, we're kind of exploring, we're experimenting, and now it's like, no, it's coming. So to my mind, they say never let a crisis go to waste. If this is the crisis, food, energy, all of it, and they're like, look, you can't afford to pay your energy bills, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. It comes down to cost, right? If you can pay, you got it. Like, it's a market. So really the people who, and what I'm seeing, because even heating costs here, I was just seeing something in New England, heating costs have gone through the roof. Kerosene, people heating with kerosene and other heating oils, it's gone through the roof. And I just saw something yesterday of somebody being interviewed in New England, where I used to live, and they were like, interviewing this older woman, and it was like, well, what can you cut out to pay for your heating? And she was like, food. That's it. Like, that's the only thing I can cut is food. So it's like people are just gonna have to decide between eating and freezing, or starving and freezing. This is going to be your choice in the winter, to starve or freeze. You know, that's the scenario that I have been saying for years. Like, this is how the CBDC will be introduced. This is how it will be. I've been saying this, right? That it's going to be in a, first I said UBI, stimulus payments, like that's what it's going to be. Well, in order to have the stimulus payments, you got to squeeze people. You got to squeeze them. And
we have stimulus now in Germany. Like I'm going to receive a stimmy, which I never asked for, but yeah.
Well, this is how, just wait until it's not even bad yet. Right? It's not even bad. So when things get bad enough, and when they're like, oh, this is at a scale that we just can't, okay, here's going to be the system. You can have it immediately. Just sign up for the app. It'll come in on a weekly basis. It'll be right there. We're going to force, because of this crisis, we're going to force every merchant to accept it the same way that they forced every merchant to have you scan a QR code or do whatever for the entrance, look at your pass, your health pass. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very simple.
And that could happen, dude, like to where now not every payment might not be in CBDCs, but the point where 90% of the population had the app and had the funds and was using it, because that'll be the first thing that you use, right? Good money chases out bad, right? Or is it bad money chases out good? It's good money chases out bad. CBDC is bad money. If you get it for free and it's this thing and you can only use it to buy goods, you can't maybe you could trade it to somebody else, but go and buy goods, boom, that's the first thing you spend.
Oh,
that's the first thing. Gresham's law. That's it. That's exactly right.
People say it's, but in this case, I think it applies because basically it's the difference.
It does apply.
It applies. Someone gave me a speech why in like some cases, like, oh, people misuse it in crypto or whatever. But in this case, I think it applies because basically it's like if you have like silver and like something that isn't silver but has the same value by the government.
Same denomination. Exactly.
Same denomination.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then no, this is when it does apply.
Silver. Yeah.
It doesn't apply to Bitcoin. It doesn't apply to Bitcoin. No. It applies to CBDC because it still would be like €1 or the paper euro. And you're like, well, which one do I spend? Obviously, I spend the free CBDC that came to me. I mean, you could be 80 IQ and realize that's the one you need to be spending, right? As opposed to this one you need to, because this one is like, well, this is universal. I could use this for even the people that don't accept the CBDC. So anyone that accepts the CBDC, I spend the CBDC. And businesses will have because of that, because it will be like so liquid and the velocity will be so high because of Gresham's law. If you're a merchant, you are going to rush to get your infrastructure set up so you can take CBDC. And it's like, boom, there's your onboarding done.
You can pay your taxes in it. That's it.
It's just very straightforward. But in order to do that, you have to squeeze the population and you have to squeeze them to not to an extreme degree, like starvation and freezing. You have to push them to.
But why?
For the CBDC.
Yeah, but why can't you just
because they have to voluntarily take it. They have to clamor for it. No, it has to be their idea. They have to ask you for it. It's not sufficient for you to. It's not sufficient for you to just roll it out. And it's not sufficient for it to be like, well, maybe I'll take it and maybe not. It needs to be where people are like, well, look what they did with the woke poke, right? There's plenty of people who are like, which again, this is something that I said, there are many people will regret taking this. I see it in all the comments where people are like, oh, I regret taking it. But what? I saw one recently where it was like, if it wasn't for my job and needing a roof over my head. Well, we know the degree to which you have to be squeezed. We know the degree to which it has to be. That's not even at the level of, or I would starve or freeze to death.
Yeah, it's like way before.
That's way before. And you shot poison into your body.
Yeah.
This is just downloading an app and getting free money.
Oh.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
This
Like,
one's
you want free money?
obvious.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want? Here's all you got to do. You're freezing and you can't eat. All you got to do is download an app, and you'll have the free money to be able to. And of course, why is it so perfect when it comes to energy and heating? Because the energy companies, it's one conversion. They need to convert their system one time, and it scales to the entire country. Right? And the food conglomerates. Same. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not like you have to get, if everybody's freezing, okay, the entity that everybody pays to stop freezing is one entity.
The electricity company.
Or two or three if you're talking about heating oil, right? But these are like natural monopolies for the most part. Like the heating oil company in a region is a single company. So the number of entities that you have to get to accept the CBDC is tiny if the squeeze that you're going to make is about energy. Very different than like if the squeeze that you have to make is
taxes. Yeah.
It's similar to taxes. Yeah. We're right back at the same mechanism here, right? So it's like that's what makes
electricity
it so
company
attractive.
Isn't that bad after all for that thing?
Well, no, it's but in this case, the electricity company can actually convert that. Like, so that's going to be part of the deal. Like the electricity company isn't issuing the CBDC. And the electricity company can pay their employees in the CBDC. Right? Because it's not just accepted at the electricity company, it's accepted everywhere. But this is why then it all starts to make sense when people are like, why would Europe voluntarily put itself through starving and freezing? Like when all they have to do is just stop.
Finally we have the nuclear plants are not being shut down. Like that was the big debate. Like it wasn't like, oh, are we going to prepare more for this? It's like, well, should we shut down more nuclear plants or should we keep the same, right? Like that was the debate. And finally, luckily, we have like, okay, we're not going to shut down even more. But that could change at any time.
But blow up Nord Stream.
Yeah, exactly.
Blow up the pipeline. It's like, wait, I don't know. People are like, what's the motivation? What's the motivation? But from the beginning of this, I said, it's all about the CBDC. When you understand that the entire move now is to CBDC, this whole landscape, all of a sudden, everything falls into place. You're like, oh, well, of course that's what they're doing. Of course that's what they're doing. And the pretense makes perfect sense.
And the pretense is Putin.
Well, you got to have a boogeyman.
Yeah, of course. Like, why is
you got to have a
boogeyman?
Well,
and we had the same thing with COVID, right? It's like, oh well, COVID's fault, right? Like everybody was saying,
that's
like,
people are like, oh yeah, my business,
COVID...
my business shut down because of COVID. It's like, no, it didn't.
Yeah, it didn't.
No, it didn't, because the same COVID was in Sweden and their businesses didn't shut down.
Yeah.
So then you got to ask, like,
mandates.
Yes, exactly. It's because the government shut your business down.
Basically, nobody's saying. I mean, for me, it's like a trigger, right? If someone, because of COVID, you got shut. Well, because of government mandates, but that's not how anybody speaks besides me and you.
But then you have to wonder, like, well, did anyone benefit from your business being shut down? And it's like, Amazon had record profits. Interesting. Amazon had record profits. Walmart had record profits. And you're like, who? Then you go like, oh, what companies spend the most lobbying the government? You can actually go and see. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Why are all of these companies who benefited from everybody else getting shut down, why are they the ones that paid the most amount of money to lobby the people who did the shutdown? And you're like, wait a minute, maybe something else is happening here. Maybe something else is happening. And it's like, crisis means decision, right? It doesn't mean catastrophe. It means decision.
Like the word crisis?
The word crisis means decision. That's what it means. That's the Greek, from the Greek. That's what it means. So it's like, when you understand that that's what a crisis is, that really it's about, we need to make a decision about something that we otherwise would never have had to make a decision about. That decision being, should we keep businesses open or should we shut them down? That was the real crisis, the real decision.
Yeah.
Right? Sweden, in that crisis, they said no. Other places in that crisis, they said no. But a decision had to be made.
Oh, and it makes total sense because Sweden already uses a CBDC. I talked to people like who were like, well, no, Sweden is just like this very like liberty focused country, and they don't like, oh, they're very good kind of structure in the government and so forth. And it's like, no. No, they didn't have anything bad happening to them because they already voluntarily went along with the CBDC.
Well, it didn't benefit them, right? It didn't move for them. It didn't move the ball forward.
Yeah.
It didn't move the ball forward, right? So it's like, there is a plan. There is a plan. And they have been telling us what the plan is for a very, very, very long time. It's way out in the open. And the plan is technocracy. And the path to that plan is very, very obvious. Like, how do you get people to agree that every single thing that they do is tracked? That's what Technocracy is from the 30s, dude. Like, there was Technocracy Inc. Like, it was a company, Technocracy Inc. They published the Technocrats magazine. They had members. They had tens of thousands of members. They had branches. You know, they gave little salutes. It was like a darn near a religion.
Wow.
And they wrote up.
I didn't
know
that.
Just go. Yes, go look up Technocracy Inc. This is like, this plan. Read the manifesto. It was basically born out of the eugenics movement. It was how they rebranded the eugenics movement after eugenics was not popular. It has
like the yin and yang symbol, except with red. And with
that was their symbol. That was their symbol. And if you look at the progression and you look at the people involved, and then you look at the climate movement, it's the same people. So it's like, all of this, it's there is a goal, and the goal is to track every human being and all of our actions, because by tracking all of our actions, they can create a better race. That's what this is all about. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about, that the people at the top decide who lives and who dies. But in order to do that, in order to have the metrics to track every single thing, you have to implement certain technologies. The CBDC is one of them. The carbon footprint tracking, which is part of it, is another one. The digital IDs is another. They're all part of the same thing. Like, it's top-down control, technologically done. It's China's already there, right? And so it's like, the way that you agree to, that you get people to agree to go along with it, is you've got to squeeze them. You've got to squeeze them, and then you've got to offer them the opportunity to be out of the squeeze. It's just really, really simple.
And they kind of codified it in the Georgia Guidestones, which are now destroyed.
They're destroyed now. They're destroyed now. But it's like, that's it. Like, that's it. That's what's happening. Right? Because, you know, really what's happened is we have people who went beyond being rich to being ridiculously rich, to the point where wealth didn't matter anymore, and all that mattered was power. And it's because we are fallen creatures, once we get to that level, and if that's what we're seeking, like, we're in the throes of basically Satan at that point. Like, the energy that is Satan, we are in the throes of that, because what we think is, if I was in charge of everything, I could fix everything. You know, because I became rich and powerful, that means I'm chosen. And my family is chosen. and we can save the world with our brilliance. Look at Bill Gates. This is what he's saying. This is what's being said by him.
Yeah.
And people are bought in. Like, why are you interviewing him on the news? Why are you he's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. Right? He's just an entrepreneur who made a ton of money, like basically building a monopoly illegally.
Writing software.
Right? With his products. Writing software. And it's like, dude, this guy's he's a goofball. He's a goofball. Right? But you get to the same thing. Mark Zuckerberg is just what, and look, his company's suffering. He changed the name to Meta. Well, what's Meta about? He's going to create his own universe that people live in that he's in control of. That's what Meta is. That's what he wants. That's what he's trying to build.
Control.
Why? Total control.
Like 100%.
Because that's what happens when you reach a point of wealth that is astronomical, where everybody's bowing down to you, where you can feel like you can build and control and get people to do whatever you want. You get this feeling of control and you feel like, well, if I had control, things would be much, much better for everyone. And I could make the world a utopia. And then you have the money and the power to do it. And you think, and these people are thinking like they're in a long-term game because they're like, well, it's not just going to be me. It's going to be my family. And my family's so great. Right? My family's so great. And that you get the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, whatever, dude. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's a natural outgrowth. These people exist. They're doing what they're doing, but it's not about them. Like, we can choose. Slavery to that is a choice. We have all the tools to not be slaves. Right. But people would rather complain. They'd rather, World Economic Forum is doing this and the Rothschilds are doing this and the Rockefellers are doing this. And it's like, okay, yeah, yes. You know what I mean? Yes, they are. They want to do that. Okay. Stop paying attention to them. Know that they're doing it. You build your thing. Use the protocols.
Yep.
Be a liminal person. You're not gonna change the grand scale of the world. You're not gonna vote any changes to this thing. You're not gonna do anything like that. Be a liminal person. They'll leave you alone. As a matter of fact, they'll respect you because they still need to go into the liminal spaces. Believe me, having been a liminal person myself, believe me, they feel just as much slaves as the people that they're controlling. Right? They feel that they have to be doing the things that they are slaves. They're slaves to the enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
And they know it. Yeah. Right? And they respect people who are free. And when you're a liminal person, you are not a threat to them. Right? You're not a threat. You're a savage.
Yes. Yeah.
You're just a savage.
Which is why all of these, like what they're, like these libertarians who are like, oh no, like we need to 76 or whatever. I'm like, no,
never gonna happen. Never gonna happen.
Well, even if that is like, you're just gonna die, right?
Well, either you're gonna die, even if
you're just explicitly their enemy, right? The stance I'm not taking is like, okay, like you guys can do whatever you want, right? Like I'm just not gonna participate, and they are purposefully making it I mean, I'm not sure how purposeful it is, but the way they're doing it is very voluntary, right? Like I make my money in crypto right now, right? Like I'm not really dependent on all of these systems and so forth. I'm trying.
But but 1776. I just want to say this. So, excuse me. 1776 to Standard Oil is like less than 100 years. So you got to understand, David Rockefeller exists because 1776. Okay. And everything that we're talking about is born from out of Rockefeller. Yes.
Rockefeller Foundation, Rothschild.
All of this is born from out of Rockefeller. Okay. So it's like all the way back to the scion. I think his name was, they called him Devil Bill. Right. And he was a snake oil salesman. Devil Bill Rockefeller. Right. So everything It's like it's about the individual. Like if you want to start over, that's what you're doing with the 1776. You want to start over with 1776, maybe you got 100 years, man. Like maybe you got 100 years because what have you put into place? You want to just make things more free? Okay, you'll get another Rockefeller. Like you'll just get another Rockefeller. It's not, you'll get another Rothschild. Right? Rothschild is during 1776. Like he's alive at that time.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like he's alive during the French Revolution. You know, Nathan Rothschild. So it's like all of these things that you have. John Law comes after the French Revolution is right there. All of these things, it's not about that. It's about you as an individual becoming a liminal person. Right? That's it. That's all you got. That's all you got. And at best, carve out a Liechtenstein for yourself. But it'll never be bigger than Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
It'll never be bigger than Luxembourg. It'll never be bigger than Andorra. It'll never be bigger than Malta. It'll never be bigger than Monaco or CNMI. It'll never be bigger. Because once it gets, in order for something to scale to a certain size, you get it's Rockefeller.
Yes. Okay. That makes total sense. Yeah. You have to stay small, which is why I'm now focusing more and more towards like local community and like how can I build something that is local, that I can depend on. I can depend on my family, right? And there's not gonna be any Rockefeller on my family. That's for sure. Because
well, there might be, right? Like, but this is the other thing we never know.
Like, there's just like a few dozen people, right?
It always starts at a small scale, right? Because ultimately it's about what's in a person's heart. You know. And I think that's the important part about the story of Rockefeller is like his dad was a snake oil salesman. And, you know, there's quotes from him, Devil Bill, of saying, I cheat my kids every chance I get, keeps them sharp. So it's like, it's bred. It's like sociopathy, right? To where you value cheating and stealing and these sorts of things, you know? And then given the opportunity, you know, you're like, oh, here's this thing, oil, we can do, you know, and given the right, I mean, that's it. It's about what people value. And the unfortunate part of something like crypto is like, if you're somebody who values number go up, if you're somebody who values fanboying, if you're somebody who values Michael Saylor-ish gibberish, you're breeding Rockefellers.
Yes. Oh, that's a good connection. Yeah. And also, of course, like anything like that is not laminar at all. Liminal.
No.
It's liminal? No, what is
liminal?
Liminal. Yeah, I was like liminal.
No,
liminal
because they want to be mainstream.
Yeah.
Right? That's their whole goal. Oh, let's mainstream Bitcoin.
Oh, eCash is liminal. Totally. Nobody knows.
eCash is liminal. eCash is, but it's liminal de facto. It's not liminal because the people involved in it want to be liminal. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Right. That's like Nietzsche saying, you know, don't confuse morality with cowardice with morality. Right. That it's like, oh, I'm not fighting that person because I'm a moral person.
Yeah. No, you just don't have the power.
No, you're just cowardly.
Yeah.
Right. You're just cowardly. And so it's like, it's a liminal.
And you can see that with like Peter Thiel or whatever. Like once he has actual power, Palantir or whatever, like all these like dangerous. I was like, well, you know, like he basically bent his morality because.
Because wealth. It's there's something there. There's a bug in the human spirit. I saw it, you know, because like for a period of my life, I was operating in circles of, I mean, people who have incredible wealth, household names, right? Were clients of mine who have incredible wealth, but you also see they have incredible power. Like they don't often have to often they don't have to spend money to get people to do things just because they are who they are. Right. And when people get that, and when people are kissing their ass all the time because they're paying them, but the amount that they're paying them, even if they're paying them a lot, is so insignificant to them that it feels almost free, but people will just do whatever they want, then it's like, well, I can just mold the world. Because you start to being like, well, I guess I kind of can on this small scale. I can mold the world how I want. Well, what about on a bigger scale? And you just start going bigger and like, I want to mold the world, you know, in the way that I want it to look. And the way that it's going to be, it's fallen the way that they want it to look, because anybody who was righteous wouldn't want to be molding the world, or they would realize like, I can't be molding the world. I'm a mess. I'm internally a mess, you know, like, ooh, don't give me control.
Yeah.
It's Gandalf, right? In Lord of the Rings at the beginning when he's like, don't give me the ring.
Yeah.
Or Galadriel, same way, is like, don't give me the ring. I know how powerful I am, and I know that I am not pure in my heart. I know what I will turn into, right? That's that level of self-awareness. Is like, if you don't have that, which I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg. You think he's got that? Come on.
No.
So of course you end up with, I'm going to make my own universe and control it. This is where, I mean, look at the time when Satoshi left, right? Satoshi left when the Wired article came out, basically putting Bitcoin into the mainstream. Right? That it was with the WikiLeaks thing, that WikiLeaks was accepting Bitcoin. And he said, I wish it could have happened a different way. They kicked the hornet's nest and now they're coming for us. And like within weeks, he had vanished. Like 2 weeks later, he was completely gone. Yeah, because liminal person. This is a liminal person, but like it's the only way to be free is to be a liminal person. Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil. It's a liminal character. Liminal person.
Very free.
It's the freest person. Right? Liminal. So it's like freedom is always liminal. Freedom is in the liminal spaces. And crypto gives us the opportunity to have that. And what's cool is that it actually gives us the opportunity to unite liminal spaces. Like to carve out a global liminal sphere.
Well, to connect
lots of people spaces. Can be well, and when you connect them, then it becomes like a thing.
Oh,
but the nature of the people inside.
That's the idea of the network state.
That's it. Well, except Balaji is a fallen individual who's a transhumanist who wants to control everything. Balaji's vision of the network state is just Zuckerberg's meta. Because for him, the goal with the network state is that he's in charge.
That makes sense.
Right? Because there's no liminal spaces have no government. That's the point. That's the point of a liminal space. Constantine.
Or if there's one, it's like for, you know, like, do you know how many people live in Liechtenstein? Like the number of residents?
Like the number 100,000 maybe?
No.
How many?
35,000.
35,000, yeah. That's less than CNMI.
Yeah, exactly. So like
similar.
There you can have like a government, right? Like
right.
But it's like
but it's more like rules.
Scale, right?
It's more just like rules that we generally go by.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's like the enforcement can be societal. Right? I mean, I was going to say Constantine, you know, the movie and the comic book. There's the bar. I said it's always a bar. Midnights. It's a Jamin Hunsu plays this character Midnight, who, and like in the bar, the angels and the demons can get together and there's no fighting. I don't know if you remember that movie.
No.
But it's, again, the bar as the liminal space, right? That it's the space in between. And if you try to fight, like Midnight's very powerful and he'll like just blast you or whatever, this character, you know? And so it's like, that's the only rule. The only rule is there's no, you set aside your governmental crap in here. You know, it's liminal. These are the liminal spaces. So if we use crypto in that way to unite these liminal spaces, and if we decide that we're going to be liminal people, fine, we can use it the way that it's supposed to be used. But if we want it to be the backbone of some sort of government, or we want to replace current government things with it, it's just the CBDC. You know, and I think it feels like to a lot of people, oh well, but that won't scale, and it's like, what do you mean? It already, like, people would say something like, oh, but I want everybody to be using Bitcoin, or I want everybody to be using crypto as a payment, or I want it. And it's like, yeah, but what about you, right? How does it benefit you specifically and your family and the people right around you? Are you using it right around you to solve the problems that are for you? Because otherwise, aren't you just talking about creating a utopian world where you've decided what the rules are, and now you're just Rockefeller, now you're just Zuckerberg in your head? That's it. And that's the whole idea of like the citadels. We're gonna make citadels and do it. It's all people just unaware of how completely fallen and sinful we all are. That's it. So we got to solve problems locally, and for people that we know at a small scale at first, and then just see what happens. Solve the problem, and not just solve the problem, but keep solving it, right? Like, put something in place that starts solving a problem for people, and like maintain it for a few years. You know, make that your little inn, your little tavern, your little trading post, your little pirate's cove, and just keep maintaining it and see what happens. Like, liminal people will come. Create a liminal space and liminal people will come. You know, and it's the other thing to think about, you know, the people who talk about 1776, well, where was that plant? In the Green Dragon Tavern.
I never heard of that story.
Yeah. Go look it up. Green Dragon Tavern. Right?
Dragon
So
Tavern.
most revolutions are planned in bars. Most revolutions are planned in bars. If you look through history of where did they meet, where did they plan, cafes, bars, bistros, liminal spaces, taverns. Crimes are also, you know, crimes of all different kinds. But isn't that where you meet the spy? Right? In the tavern, you know, that's where you go to meet the spy. People know these things, you know, so it's like, don't discount the power and the importance of liminal spaces to change the world. It's the only base from which the world has ever been changed.
That makes sense. And we are naturally attracted to those, which is good. Like whenever I feel something doesn't feel like a liminal space anymore, I just naturally escape. And I think, I'm not sure if it's similar for you, but I think now
very similar. Yeah. Now I found my permanent space.
Right.
Now I found my permanent, but I think of course we're attracted to liminal spaces because we're attracted to Bitcoin.
Yeah, and we're liminal people.
Well, so we're going to be attracted to that thing that sits on the edge of the wilderness. You know, that's what it is. It's the outskirts. You know,
the crypto savage.
It's the margin, right? The margins, because it's at the margins where, like, because this is where anything new, any innovators are always at the margins.
Yes.
Innovators are always marginal people. They have to be, because anything that's new can't come from inside. It has to come from outside, right? I wrote about this in my first book. No, in my second book, Self-Ownership. So all innovation has to come from the outside. That's you know, that's why we're innovating in crypto. It's because we're on the margins, the far margins. You know, what's on the inside? The maximalists. Number go up. I'm going to invest. You know, it's pretty, it's, if only people knew.
Did you see the interaction I had on Liberty or Lifetime? I think he commented or something. Oh yeah, I posted on Twitter because it was just so funny how like there was a Bitcoin maxi on a panel, and then was a questionnaire.
Oh, I did see that. I did see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it was like, what was it? Shitcoiner Chad versus Bitcoiner Virgin or something like that. Yeah.
Somebody said that to me afterwards. It's like I was like, oh, that was very flattering. And I said, oh, I'm a shitcoiner Chad, right? Because like, you know, like stable coins from their perspective are like 100% shitcoins, right? Like,
which is weird.
It's number go down technology.
The best stable coins are built on Bitcoin networks.
Yeah.
The best, most useful stable coins ride on Bitcoin networks. You know, I mean, Tether is obviously the king.
Yeah.
And it was built on Bitcoin, right?
Oh,
it's the stable coin is
they're going to roll out a ton of Tether ATMs in Brazil. Did you see that?
Smart.
Yeah. No, like they're just expanding. Like and same thing again, right? Like the people building Tether, they're kind of like snake's oil kind of people, no?
They're also liminal people. Right? They are liminal people. They are marginal, and they were for a long time. 2014 was like what they were doing, what they were building with Tether was something in 2014 that nobody was like, this doesn't even make sense. Why would you make a coin that doesn't go up?
Yeah.
Isn't the whole point that the number goes up? And it's like, you look now at 24-hour volume, Tether is the world reserve cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Right. With Bitcoin technology, they basically created a printing press to print US dollars.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, you have to buy Bitcoin to wait for number to go up. They press a button and print US dollars. Who really is playing this game?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, isn't that, and this is, you know, this is where it's at, is really understanding what this is all for, really understanding where the power lies. But at the same time, you got to keep your wits about you. And you also have to try to purify yourself. Right? Because you have to understand, like, but that's not good. Tether being, you know, unsecured, basically, like that eventually falls apart. If you're going to do this, do it right. Like, so that's one thing for me that, you know, with this whole Bucks project, I actually had somebody, you know, working on a kind of a separate application with a partner on some of this. And he was asking, well, could we put like, you know, could we put this and that, and like for people to have trust in the thing? And I was like, look, the biggest, most important thing to me is that like there will always be deposits to back this. Like, even if it's 10 years before I make any money on this, like what's important, that's what's the most important thing to me. Is that like this thing will work. There will always be deposits. There will never be a question of like, oh, somebody can't get their money out. There will never be any of that. That the people who use it, and that will work. That the people who get it will get it. The people who understand that it's trustworthy and they have trust in me, then, and that I'm trustworthy after years of using it, they're like, oh yeah, this guy. That's how it works. You know, like that's what you got to be. And because trust is still a part of the human condition. You know, we can have the technology be relatively trustless, but trust is still a part of some aspect of the human condition, and it's very valuable. You know, so this is how we have to operate, and we got to look at it for the long term. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, like where is this going to be? Because if things go the way that we think things are going to go, there's going to be a time in the not too distant future where people are going to need some place to escape to. Fundamentally, like at a literally and figuratively, but certainly financially. And so in some ways, it's just about just establishing that place, knowing that people will need to escape to it. And at that time, you don't have to worry about it being profitable. You know, at that time, it's just like the kingdom just fills up with people. And it's like, if you, if you've purified yourself, then you will be able to be a good caretaker and helpful for those people. If you haven't purified yourself, when they show up, you'll do nothing but exploit them. So it's actually better for you and for them that you don't build it and they don't show up. Because it's, yes, you exploit them, but in that exploitation of you exploiting them, they might find salvation. Right? Like that might be a means for them to purify their soul. In other words, the danger, who's at danger in terms of their soul is not the slave, it's the master. So like, if you have to prefer from the standpoint of your own soul, whether you're a master or a slave, you should prefer to be a slave.
And I think
the slave can be pure.
What Christianity provides is like, well, whatever
it provides.
You are a slave, right? Like, you know, you can choose to, and I think that at the end of the day, like you can't even really choose, because if you choose to be a master, at the end you're still a slave. Just
you're a slave to the adversary at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a slave to your passions. You're a slave to your passions, right? It's like, what's the and that's like the peril of your soul. Your soul is in peril at that point, because it's not good. It's not good, right? Like, you think the slave may have to worry about the wrath of the master, right? So like, coming from one thing, every slave may worry about that a little bit, but the master has to constantly worry about the wrath of the slaves, like en masse. You don't want to have to, like, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. That's not who you want to be. Like, you don't want to be in charge. You don't want to be the master over the slaves, right? There's no benefit. There's no benefit. Like, at best, like caretaker. At best, like father. You know, you're free to go if you need to go. If not, sort of, here's the rules. You know, I'll help, but my goal is to see you become better.
Like a mentorship.
A mentorship, right? Like, that's at best. But
I
not
think this
like
is the kind of stuff that we're building at the moment, especially. Like, I'm sliding more and more towards like mentorship. Like, a lot of the people who, you know, like I personally met, like younger than me, not too much younger, and they're like really interested in computer science and so forth. Like, they are now, okay, Tobias, how can I do that? How can I do this? And, and like there's you know, like this mode of like, okay, how can I exploit that? But also like, okay, how can I guide them towards actualizing their own potential?
That's what you've got to, that's the decision that you have to make, you know, at all times. It's like, are you going to act in love or are you going to act in fear? Because really, that how do you capitalize on it or monopolize it or exploit it is really all about fear. It's really FOMO. Oh, I have this opportunity. I should, you know, never let a crisis go to waste, blah, blah, blah. Because you have fear about something, you know, as opposed to acting in love and being like, okay, I'll help. And it's like, it's a cross. It's a burden to be a mentor to someone.
It is. It takes so much time. It's crazy.
It takes a lot of time, and it's also why you have to have a good filter. Because at the same time, you shouldn't want to be a mentor. You know, it should be a burden. Somebody should have to earn it. And
yeah, I have this one guy. He just randomly kind of showed up on Reddit, and he really, really wants to be a developer. Like, he hates his job and whatever, and he's like super duper motivated and like super duper driven, and actually like a little bit annoying, but like annoying in a way that where I'm like, well, I understand where you're coming from, right? Like you really want to solve this problem. And yeah, that's something like, okay, well, if you go that far, like if you do all of these things, then like, yes, I can help you with that. But yeah,
at least someone to show a certain degree of dedication and follow certain instructions. It's like, can you at least show up? Like show up and do this bare minimum thing. Right, here's the thing, show up and do it. Will you do it? That's already a filter for like 90% of people. And not like some minor thing, but like you have to do that. This is a prerequisite thing. Like I'm telling you to do this thing because this is a thing you're going to need to do as you move forward. It's something you're going to do all the time. Right? So can you do this? Can you just show up and just do this? And like if that can't be done, if somebody's not willing to do that, then it's like, well, then it's not the right time for you to be their mentor. That's a filter for about like 95% of people. But some people are very they view being a mentor as like something that they should aspire to. Oh yeah, oh okay, because somebody's looking up to them or something like that. And it's like then you'll expend energy, and really it's really important actually that if somebody is unworthy, that they're not, that you don't spend your time on them. For them, important.
Yeah,
for them, right? Because they need to learn that like, oh, I didn't do this, and because of that I wasn't able to have this relationship that would have been valuable to me. Okay, next time I really need to do the thing.
Otherwise you're enabling.
Right? You're not actually helping them, because it's like becoming a mentee, I guess, an apprentice or whatever, to a mentor is like, it's a learned skill of how do I even, and it's, hopefully you get higher and higher, and like you have this mentor and you learn how to be an apprentice, and then that allows you to be an apprentice to a different mentor and a different mentor and a different mentor as things get higher and higher and higher. And then eventually maybe you are able to be a mentor yourself and you don't even realize that it happened.
Yeah.
Right. That somebody's like, oh yeah,
because how
they say you were their mentor, and you're like, I don't even know. I don't even.
Yeah. Because ideally you, as a apprentice, as a mentee, like you should really think about, okay, how can I like be as like as little trouble as possible, right? Like how can I right, like be as little as a nuisance as I can, and like how far can I go on my own, right? Like
that's a big part.
Am I actually being stuck? And like how, and even if you are like really stuck, like there's like this idea of like isolating the problem, right? Okay, like I got this far, and now I know like here's a bubble that I just don't understand at all, and I don't know why this is happening. And often if you like people give me a it's a XY problem, right? They don't, they like, oh, I'm trying to do this and it doesn't work. I was like, well, what's your actual goal? Or like they say, oh, I'm using chronic and I like, and the transaction doesn't work. I'm like, no, like show me the error. Like give me the steps you did and where it failed. Because like if you give me an abstract description of like, oh, I'm generally doing this kind of thing and it doesn't work, I'm like, no, this is not how this thing works. So you have to be very specific, and like you need to give me like just a big dump of data, right? Like give me everything. I can scroll through it. Like don't give me like this Q&A of like, okay, can you try this? And then like this back and forth. It's very, very time consuming. Like there are these things that you can do to be a better mentee, I guess, if that's a word.
Well, the description of the problem, right? Like that's just like, obviously in any software, any person involved in software should know, if you want your problem answered, the the degree to which and the quality of the answer you will receive when asked in public is going to be directly related to how good your description of the problem is, including all of the things that you have tried and how detailed you are in terms of the things that you have tried and the results that have come from the things that you have tried.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but that's not just in software, that's everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's just
Fixing
a principle. Right. And it's like, because, and there's also, people also don't understand this. It's actually a sign of respect of the expertise of the person and the mastery of the person that you're asking the question of. But dude, this even goes so far as like doctors, you know, like this is something that I've learned about dealing with doctors over the years. I had an uncle who was a physician, right? So like, he's actually the one who taught me this, my mom's brother. So, you know, we were around doctors and whatnot because his colleagues and everything. And so, you know, when you go into the doctor, it's kind of the same thing. You know, if you've got some sort of pain or illness or whatever, it's like, okay, this started at this time. It's this. When I do this, this happens. When I do this, it's lessened a little bit. It's exactly in this location. It's moved from here to here. I took this medication this number of hours ago. It didn't help that. Just the entire thing at first, and you will get a smile from the doctor. Because what they're used to is my throat hurts.
Yeah.
And then they have to go through asking all of those questions. So what you're actually doing when you give them all of that, what they realize is, oh, they actually will perceive that you have some medical experience. And actually the answers that you get back from them will be of a much higher quality. They'll give you more explanations about things.
Yeah.
Right, about, like, I've noticed this, right? Where it's like, they'll give you more explanations about like, okay, well, it could be this, it could be this. And normally we would do this and this. They will actually start talking to you in the way that they would talk to a doctor, as opposed to the way they would talk to some pleb who would just, okay, what did you take for it? Blah, blah, blah. Now they're annoyed at you. They want you to go away. Right. And it's like, because what you've done is you've done work. There's a minimum amount of work that needs to be done to solve this problem. And the question is, who's going to do the work? Right. So when somebody comes to you and says, exactly, when they come to you and they say, I'm using chronic and my transaction won't go through, and that's all they say, they want you to do the work to solve their problem, because their transaction going through is not your problem. You use chronic and it works just fine for your transactions. So it's not your problem. They want you to do the work to solve the problem. Now, most people, we understand reciprocity, right? So most people, if it's your thing, chronic, and you're the expert, and the other person comes to you and they've done the majority of the work and they show you that they've done the majority of the work, reciprocity.
And this is a take I now do more. Like when, you know, like there's certain people who always ask for, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And like, well, yes, this is really like, this feature is very easy to implement. Why don't you do it? And I help you, right? Like if you have any question, I answer it, right? Like, for example, people are like, oh, like the Explorer here, the Explorer this, can you add like, for example, the current token supply? Like actually really important thing, right? Like if you think about it, like you want to go to the Genesis, you see how much, what's the current supply of everything. But like, I don't need it. I currently don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I could charge to GNC for that, but you know, like, so if people are asking that, I'm like, I'm gonna answer all of your questions, and you will be able to solve it. Right? Like, I know you're smart enough that you will, but you should put the time in so that I know that you actually need this, right?
Yep.
Because talk is cheap.
Yeah. How bad do you need it? Yeah. How bad do you need it? Right. That's whose problem is it? You know, at the end of the day, whose problem is it? And the people who really need it, who aren't going to do the work, then how you show reciprocity is you say, I'll pay you for it. I need it done. I want it done. Here's how much I'm willing to pay.
Yeah.
You know, because then it's like, oh, okay, well, you've done work because you did work to get the funds to be able to pay me. Yeah. So now you're actually offering the reciprocity of the work. and this is what most people are not willing to do. And it is also why the current culture of crypto cannot breed that. Because number go up is the antithesis of that.
Yeah. It's like if you think about it, it's like, okay, how can I extract as much value from you?
Takers.
Yeah.
And you notice that in the things that they say, oh, because somebody else, some other developer is building this, and this, then that means that the number is going to go up.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy and hold and wait for these people to build this, and this. I'm not going to pay them to build it. I'm not going to help them build it. I'm just going to buy this thing, and that, by the way, doesn't help them at all, because you're not buying it even from them in the most for the most part. I'm just going to buy bags from somebody else and then just sit on it and wait for a number to go up, and it'll go up because they're building this, and I'm going to fanboy. They're building this and this, they're building this, and it's just like, shut up. Shut up. Right? Like, you're not helping me build this at all. And as a matter of fact, can you stop buying the coin, please? Like, let me buy it. If you want me to build it, let the price go down. Sell the coins.
So I can buy it. So I can scoop it up.
So I can buy it. Right? On my own effort.
You're doing price gouging.
Basically, yeah, you're price gouging me. So, yeah, man. Well, we've been talking for a long time. 3 hours.
Yeah, but super good. Super good. I'm actually getting a little sleepy. Had to plug in.
All right, man.
Like I was fully charged, the laptop, and super duper efficient, most efficient computer I ever had. But we burned through that.
Burned through it. Well, then yeah, I'll let you go then.
No, I'll
let you go.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
That covered basically everything I thought about. Oh, one thing that was being asked. When will Bucks have Zelle support?
What do you mean, when will Bucks have? What does that mean? Oh, like that somebody could pay via Zelle?
Yeah.
Well, Bank of Saipan would have to have Zelle support first.
Okay, so yeah,
and they don't.
That's
and they won't. They probably won't. So, they probably won't.
Yeah. So it's not gonna happen anytime.
So it's not gonna happen. But yeah, and it probably wouldn't be instant anyway. But there will be. I'm trying to work out how to have support for ACH and wires. So if they're on Zelle, they're in the US. So like there will be probably ACH support soon. I just have to build a little more infrastructure to figure out how to do that, or how I know how to do it. I just have to figure out what method I'm going to use to do it. But yeah, there probably will not be Zelle support, but PayPal.
Yep.
PayPal, people could do PayPal immediately. And if they want to, I mean, of course they can reach out to the support email that's there. If somebody wants to do a large amount of bucks, we can definitely do it by bank wire or whatever. So, and it'll be it should be relatively fast. Like if you're doing ACH or whatever, like one day, usually into Bank of Saipan. So if somebody wants to do big ones like that, they want to like preload something or put it on exchange, they can always reach out to me with that.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Cool.
Again, thank you so much. Vin, man. You'll always be Vin for me. You can find him at Cyprianus on Twitter.
Yes.
Yes. And yeah.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Bye. Later.